So imagine checking your mail right now. You're standing at the end of your driveway, or maybe you're just down in the lobby of your apartment building.
Yeah, doing that totally standard, almost unconscious sorting thing we all do.
Exactly. You know the exact rhythm of it. It's like junk, bill, flyer, junk, check.
Right, you're barely even looking at the envelopes at that point.
No, your brain is just operating on complete autopilot.
Yes.
It's filtering out 90% of the noise because, frankly, you have way better things to do with your day.
Oh, absolutely.
But then you slide your finger under the flap of this very standard, totally unassuming envelope, and a crisp, perfectly real $20 bill just flutters right out and lands on your shoes.
Wait, like real money?
Real money.
Mm.
It is not a coupon. It is not some clever graphic printed on cardstock. It is actual legal tender.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that would wake me up.
Right. You would immediately stop the sorting process, wouldn't you? You would pay absolute, undivided attention to whatever was printed on the piece of paper inside that specific envelope.
I mean, you have to. It is the ultimate pattern interrupt.
It really is.
The entire dynamic of that mundane chore has just been shattered because in that split second, the sender has essentially purchased your focus.
Literally purchased it.
Exactly. They have bypassed the usual friction of communication, which is really just getting someone to acknowledge your existence by invoking one of the most primal psychological levers we have, reciprocity.
Reciprocity, right.
Yeah. You are suddenly holding their money. You didn't earn it, you didn't ask for it, but you have it. And that creates an immediate, almost uncomfortable psychological tension.
Yeah, you feel this sudden obligation to at least hear them out, right? To figure out what the transaction is supposed to be.
You're forced into a conversation, basically.
But what if I told you that the very next words you read in that letter, the absolute first sentence of the message they paid $20 for you to read, made you want to take that cash, crumple it up inside the letter, and throw the entire thing straight into the recycling bin?
Oh, man. That requires a monumental failure of communication.
A total disaster.
Truly, because if a person hands you $20 out of thin air, they have already conquered the absolute hardest barrier in modern life, which is just apathy.
Right. They got you to care for a second.
Yeah. So to immediately lose a reader after successfully buying their attention, it means the writer didn't just make a slight grammatical error or, have a weak argument.
Right.
It means they committed a fatal foundational error in how human beings actually relate to one another.
And this is not some hypothetical scenario. This actually happened to master copywriter and marketing expert Vitale. He was the one standing there, quite literally bribed to read a sales pitch.
Which is wild to think about.
It's crazy. The sender attached real currency to the top of the letter, successfully hooking him. And yet the pitch failed catastrophically.
It didn't just fail to make a sale, right?
No, it actively repelled him. He felt totally disgusted by it. So today we are taking a deep dive into the core introduction of Joe Vitale's work on hypnotic writing.
This is such an important section of the text.
It really is. We're going to figure out how to break through the noise by abandoning this concept of ego copy and mastering what he calls waking hypnosis.
Which is a psychological shift that is absolutely vital for anyone in business, any entrepreneur, or honestly anyone who simply wants their ideas to be heard and acted upon.
Exactly. Because the paradox here is what makes this so critical. The person who sent that letter understood human psychology just enough to use a highly effective gimmick, the financial bribe.
Right, but they completely lacked the psychological insight required to construct a message that actually sustains that attention.
They knew how to knock on the door, but they had absolutely no idea what to say when the door was open.
So true.
So let's look at the exact words that ruined the endeavor, because this perfectly illustrates the trap we are going to dissect today. We are looking at the concept of ego copy.
Okay, let's hear the train wreck.
Right, so the sender has his attention. The $20 bill has done its job. And here are the exact offending lines that open the letter. The first sentence reads, quote, "I want to take a moment of my time to share with you." And the immediate next sentence begins, "My company has recently introduced."
Oh, it's physically uncomfortable to analyze those lines once you realize what is happening beneath the surface.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah, let's isolate the psychological disconnect happening in just those two sentences. The writer is trapped entirely inside his own perspective.
Completely.
He is obsessed with his own goals, his own desires, his own product. In his absolute desperation to make a pitch, He has forgotten that a second human being actually exists on the other side of the paper.
Right. Pay very close attention to the specific phrasing he chose there. I want to take a moment of my time.
That phrase just screams off the page. My time, not your time.
Think about the sheer arrogance embedded in that sentence. The sender is the one asking for money, ultimately. The sender is the one interrupting the reader's day. And yet, the sender frames the interaction as if he is doing the reader a massive favor. It implies that the writer's time is highly valuable, and the reader should be incredibly grateful for the privilege of this interruption.
It is a profound display of unchecked ego. I mean, the sender has successfully manufactured a moment of tension and intense curiosity with the money.
Right.
So the reader's brain is highly activated, asking a very specific set of survival questions like, what is this about? Who are you? What do you want from me?
Yeah, very primal questions.
And how does the writer respond to that vulnerable state of curiosity? By saying, I want to talk about me. I want to talk about my company.
And the reaction from Vitale was just visceral. He notes that his immediate reaction was literal apathy. His internal monologue was just, I don't care what's in it for me.
Which perfectly mirrors a very specific, agonizing social situation, if you think about it.
Like what?
Imagine you are at a networking event or maybe a dinner party, and you are cornered by a total narcissist. They walk up to you and hand you a free, top-shelf drink.
Okay, so that's the $20 bill. They bought your attention.
Exactly. But then they trap you in the corner for 45 uninterrupted minutes to talk exclusively about their golf swing, their recent corporate promotion, the specs of their amazing new car.
Oh, I'm getting stressed just thinking about it.
Right. You are holding the free drink, you feel the social obligation of the gift, but your entire biological system is screaming for you to find the nearest exit.
The free drink cannot compensate for a social hostage situation.
No, it can't. And in the realm of written communication, this is exactly what the text defines as ego copy.
Ego copy.
Yeah, ego copy is any form of writing, whether it's an email, a website, a cover letter, a direct mail piece where the author is trapped in their own world.
And you can spot it immediately, right?
Exactly.
Because it is utterly littered with the words I, me, we, our company, our product, our mission.
Yes. It operates on the deeply flawed, almost delusional assumption that the reader wakes up in the morning caring about you.
Which is a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of creators and businesses.
Huh.
But it is a fundamental truth of human nature. When we are reading a pitch, we are ruthlessly, fundamentally selfish.
We have to be.
We are scanning the text for survival, for benefit, or for entertainment. We are not reading to make the author feel good about their accomplishments.
It's literally a biological imperative. The human brain is incredibly stingy with its energy. Paying attention burns actual calories.
Right.
So when we open a piece of mail or click on a website, our brain is instantly running a subconscious cost-benefit analysis like, is this worth my cognitive energy?
And when the text says I and we and our company, the brain recognizes that the text is asking for energy without offering a return on investment.
Exactly. It triggers the ultimate barrier to persuasion, which is, what's in it for me?
And if that question isn't answered immediately, the brain just shuts off the attention valve to conserve resources.
Which means the ultimate secret to persuasion, I mean, the absolute baseline requirement before you attempt any fancy psychological triggers or marketing tactics, is getting out of your own ego and stepping entirely into the reader's ego.
You have to undergo a complete perspective shift.
You do. You are no longer the protagonist of the story you are writing. The reader is the protagonist.
Right. You're merely the guide offering them a tool to help them overcome their own obstacles.
Think about the practical application of this for a second. Anyone listening to this conversation right now can instantly improve their communication by performing a really simple audit.
Ooh, I like this. What kind of audit?
Take the last email you sent pitching an idea to a client, or maybe your resume, or the About Us page on your current project's website. Literally count the pronouns.
Just tally them up.
Yeah. Tally up every I, every we, and every our, then tally up every you and your.
And if the first column outnumbers the second, you are writing ego copy.
Exactly. You are talking to an empty room, essentially demanding that the reader care about your world instead of proving that you care about theirs.
Okay, wait. I need to push back on this for a second.
Yeah.
Because it sounds great in theory, but in practice, it feels a little dangerous.
How so?
Let's say I am writing a sales page for a high-ticket consulting service, or I am pitching a startup to investors. Don't people need to know exactly who I am?
Sure.
Don't they need to know my credentials, how long my company's been operating, what awards we've won? so they can trust us.
Right, the authority question.
Yeah. If I strip all the I and we out of my writing, don't I completely surrender my authority? How can I be a guide if I don't explain my qualifications?
That is honestly the most common fear people have when they confront the concept of ego copy. But establishing credibility does not require self-obsession.
Okay.
We misunderstand where trust actually comes from. Trust is not built by bragging. Trust is built by demonstrating that you deeply, fundamentally understand the other person's problem.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's use a medical analogy. If you go to the hospital with a severe, agonizing pain in your abdomen, and the doctor walks into the exam room and spends the first 20 minutes reciting their resume.
Oh, wow.
Right. Detailing their time at Harvard Medical School, listing the prestigious papers they've published, you do not feel comforted.
No, I would probably think, this person cares more about their degree than my appendix.
Precisely. You feel completely ignored. Their authority is meaningless to you in that moment because they haven't addressed your pain.
But contrast that with a different approach.
Exactly. The doctor walks in, takes one look at you, and says, based on how you are holding your side and your pale complexion, I can see you are in excruciating pain. I know exactly what is causing that specific ache, and I have a procedure that will make it stop within 10 minutes.
You instantly, implicitly trust that doctor.
You don't even ask to see their diploma. Their authority was established entirely through their radical empathy and their precise diagnosis of your situation.
So you establish authority by articulating the reader's problem better than they can articulate it themselves.
That is it. That is the secret.
That reframes the entire concept of pitching. Authority comes from the diagnosis of the reader's pain, not from the reciting of the writer's resume.
You don't need to say, our company is the best.
Right. You need to say, you are suffering from this specific problem, and here's how your life looks without it.
Exactly.
So if ego copy is the trap, if focusing on ourselves is the guaranteed way to get our $20 bills thrown in the trash, what is the alternative?
Right. How do we fix it?
Yeah, how do we actually achieve that deep connection? This leads us to the core concept of the philosophy we're exploring today, a term that sounds incredibly dramatic, but is actually a deeply practical psychological tool.
Waking hypnosis.
Waking hypnosis.
Now, the term itself carries a massive amount of cultural baggage, which we have to clear away immediately.
Yeah, when you say hypnosis, the average person pictures a Las Vegas stage act.
Totally. They picture a swinging pocket watch, a sinister figure demanding someone look into their eyes, and a complete loss of free will where someone ends up, clucking like a chicken.
Right, it sounds like mind control.
But that is not at all what is being discussed in the source material. The text is referencing a very specific, historically grounded psychological concept. It points directly back to a pioneer in the field named Wesley Wells.
Wesley Wells.
Yeah, who coined the term waking hypnosis a century ago, back in 1924.
And Wells was writing in an outline of abnormal psychology, right? He was trying to solve a clinical problem.
He was. He wanted to draw a distinct scientific line between traditional hypnosis and a totally different state of mind.
Because traditional hypnosis is what we typically imagine. The subject is put to sleep, their eyes are closed, their breathing slows, they are largely unconscious of their surroundings.
Right. But Wells argued for a state of awake concentration. He posited that you can have your eyes wide open, you can be completely conscious, you can be walking around, and yet you can still be in a profound trance state where you are highly subject to suggestion.
To ground this in reality, the text mentions this incredible moment where the author actually spoke to a crowd of 2,000 professional hypnotists at the world's largest hypnosis convention.
Yeah, these are the absolute experts in the field.
And he defined his concept of hypnotic writing to them not as a parlor trick to make people drowsy, but as a method of communication.
He defined it as the art of holding someone's attention so tightly and so exclusively that they enter this waking trance.
The external world simply fades away because their cognitive resources are entirely consumed by the text.
And I think everyone has experienced this state even if they didn't have the vocabulary for it.
Oh, for sure. Think about reading a gripping thriller novel on a crowded subway train, and you are so absorbed in the plot that you completely miss your stop.
Yes. Or you are scrolling through a deeply compelling article on your phone while sitting in your living room, and your spouse has to say your name 3 or 4 times before you finally look up and realize they are talking to you.
You were not asleep. You didn't lose consciousness, but you were absolutely undeniably hypnotized.
Your attention was completely hijacked.
That is the exact neurological state waking hypnosis aims to achieve. And the text provides a very precise mechanical definition of how this is achieved through writing.
It quotes an anonymous 1956 mail order course titled Dynamic Speed Hypnosis.
Right. And the definition is incredibly clear. Quote, anything you do which makes your readers react because of mental images you plant in their minds is waking hypnosis.
The engine of this entire philosophy, the mechanism that creates the trance, is that phrase, mental images.
Let's stop and look at that phrase, mental images, because it seems almost too simple. I mean, we are taught in grade school to be descriptive. But when you intentionally plant a mental image in someone's mind, you are actually doing something quite invasive. You're hijacking their sensory processing.
You really are.
If I write the sentence, imagine biting into a crisp, intensely sour green apple and feeling the cold juice hit the back of your throat, your mouth might actually physically water right now.
Oh, mine just did.
Right. I have not merely transmitted data about an apple. I have forced your brain to simulate a physical experience.
And that simulation requires massive neurological resources. This is deeply rooted in how human cognition evolved.
How so?
Well, our brains are essentially prediction and simulation machines. We do not just passively receive language. We actively construct reality based on the words we process.
So it's an active process.
Very active. When we read a compelling sensory mental image, the brain processes it in many of the same areas that would process the actual lived reality. The visual cortex, the motor cortex, they light up.
Because the brain is allocating so much energy to visualizing that image, to simulating the sourness of the apple, there are literally fewer cognitive resources available to pay attention to the environment.
That is exactly why you miss your subway stop. The mental image has consumed the bandwidth that normally monitors the sound of the train announcer.
Wow. So the text argues that planting these dense sensory images is the literal mechanism for inducing focus. You force the brain to simulate, and in doing so, you shut out the rest of the world.
That's the mechanics of it, yeah.
But wait, if I'm a skeptic looking at this, I have to ask, isn't hypnosis in this context just a slightly edgy, dramatic marketing word for good storytelling? Or just being an engaging writer?
I get that a lot.
If I read a beautiful poem that paints a vivid picture of a landscape, I might get lost in it. Am I being hypnotized, or am I just enjoying art? Why use the word hypnosis at all if we just mean writing that paints a good picture?
That's a fair pushback. But the distinction lies entirely in intentionality and direction.
Intentionality.
Yeah. Good storytelling, or poetry, aims to entertain or provoke thought. It aims to hold attention for its own sake, to create an aesthetic experience.
Right, you just enjoy the poem.
But the definition of hypnotic writing provided in the text is much more directed. It defines it as intentionally using words to guide people into a focused mental state where they are inclined to buy your product or agree with your proposal or take a specific predetermined action.
Ah, so the intent transforms it from storytelling into a psychological tool.
Yes. You are not just holding their attention so they admire your prose. You are holding their attention and planting very specific, sequential mental images to guide them down a psychological funnel. Right. You are actively aligning their internal emotional state with the solution you offer. A great novelist wants you to feel the general human condition of sadness or joy. A hypnotic writer wants you to feel the acute, specific pain of your current business problem.
And then the specific, palpable relief of their software solution so intensely that the act of clicking buy feels like the only logical way to resolve the tension they just simulated in your brain.
Exactly. It's a guided journey from pain to relief.
That is a massive paradigm shift. It means we cannot just write to transmit dry facts.
No, facts alone are powerless.
If you want someone to reply to your email or fund your startup or buy your product, you have to write to induce a focused mental state.
You should literally look at the text on your screen and ask yourself, what specific sensory mental image am I forcing my reader to picture right now?
And if the answer is none,
if you are just listing bullet points of data, timelines, and feature sets, you are not engaging their simulation machine.
you are not holding their attention.
No, you are leaving their cognitive bandwidth wide open to be distracted by a text message or a barking dog.
Which brings us to the ultimate concrete test of this theory. Because it's one thing to talk about sour apples and high-level psychology, but how does this apply to selling something ordinary?
This is where it gets really fun.
The source material provides a brilliant case study that perfectly highlights the difference between transmitting dry facts and inducing a mental experience. It's the massage pen test.
I love this example so much.
I find this example so compelling because it is incredibly mundane. We aren't trying to sell a luxury sports car or a life-changing tropical retreat or $1 million software package.
We are looking at a pen.
A literal pen, specifically a standard functioning ballpoint pen, but it has a small vibrating massaging head attached to the top end.
Right. You write with one end, you flip it over, press it against your skin, and it vibrates.
Now, if you are tasked with selling this object online, how do you do it?
Most people would do it terribly.
Well, the text gives us two versions of the copy. The first version is the industry standard. I'm going to read this, and as I do, monitor your own internal state.
Okay, I'm ready.
Pay attention to your level of interest, your heart rate, and what you're picturing in your mind. Here's the boring copy.
Let's hear it.
Quote, the unique metal ballpoint pen with built-in massage. Rugged metal construction, attractive design, patented massage function, replaceable ink refills, batteries included.
Wow. It is the literary equivalent of white noise.
It's awful. My brain actively wanted to stop processing the words halfway through. It's like reading the instruction manual for a toaster from 1994.
Let's dissect exactly why this fails so spectacularly on a psychological level. It is factually flawless, right?
It is. It tells you exactly what the physical object is and every single thing it comes with.
But it contains absolutely zero reasons for a human being to care. It induces profound boredom, and boredom is the ultimate enemy of the waking trance.
Because if you bore your reader, the simulation machine shuts down.
Exactly. The trance breaks instantly, and they click away to find something more stimulating.
There are no mental images here to process. I mean, rugged metal construction. What is the brain supposed to do with that?
Am I supposed to picture a steel I-beam on a construction site?
Right. And why do I want a steel I-beam in my pocket? Attractive design. That is an entirely subjective judgment that paints absolutely no picture.
And replaceable ink refills. Try to contain your excitement.
It is the purest example of feature-driven copy, which is really just ego copy in disguise, if you think about it.
Oh, completely. Think about it from the creator side. The manufacturer is incredibly proud of the fact that they secured a patent for the massage function, and they are proud they used metal instead of cheap plastic.
So because they are trapped in their own ego, that is what they list.
They completely failed to cross the bridge into the reader's reality. They failed to ask the most basic question.
Which is?
Under what circumstances would a living, breathing human being actually desire a pen that vibrates?
Right. What is the human context for this object?
Now let's look at the contrasting approach. This copy was pulled from a website called stupid.com, which specializes in selling novelty items.
Listen to how they approach the exact same physical object. Here is the Hypnotic copy.
Okay.
Quote, that feels good.
Such a difference.
Let's just pause right there. The very first line of the pitch isn't a fact. It's not a specification. It is a sound.
It is an expression of deep physical relief.
It immediately forces a mental image of relaxation before you even know what the product is.
It completely bypasses the logical, fact-checking part of the brain and speaks directly to sensory experience. It demands that the simulation machine turn on.
Let's hear how they build on that opening.
Yeah, go ahead.
The copy continues by describing the exact scenario where you would desperately need this object. It talks about the agony of writer's block. It talks about staring at a blank computer screen, feeling the tension physically creeping up the back of your neck, feeling the stress knotting in your shoulders.
Oh, I can feel that right now.
And then, right at the moment when the reader is mentally simulating that stress, it introduces the pen as a vibrating wonder.
A vibrating wonder. I love that.
It instructs you to flip it over, press it directly to your tense neck, and let it melt the tension away.
The mechanics of why this works are beautiful in their precision. This copy isn't selling a pen. It is selling relief.
It follows a perfect, emotionally resonant psychological arc.
It does. First, it plants a vivid mental image of a highly relatable pain. The acute stress of writer's block, the physical muscular tension in the neck and shoulders.
Anyone who works at a desk, anyone who writes emails for a living, can instantly visualize and literally feel that specific tension when prompted.
So they are in the trance. They are actively simulating the stress the writer just described.
Exactly.
And once they are in that state, once the mental image of stress and discomfort is fully established, the copywriter provides the antidote.
They introduce the vibrating wonder that melts the tension away.
They rapidly replace the mental image of stress with a mental image of profound physical relaxation. The
They have expertly guided the reader's mental state from discomfort to comfort
Yeah.
and positioned this $5 novelty item as the essential bridge between those two states.
It's masterful.
But hold on, I have to challenge this framework.
Okay, lay it on me.
Because the boring copy we read first, the rugged metal construction, batteries included, version that looks exactly like 99% of the product listings on major retailers today.
Sad but true.
It is the accepted industry standard format for a reason. If I am buying tech or hardware or software, I don't care about a feeling. I need the specs.
You think you just need the specs?
Well, if I buy this pen and it arrives without batteries, and I have to go to the store to buy some weird watch battery to make it work, I am going to be furious. I need the facts. If you don't give me the facts, I'm out.
You're absolutely right that the facts are necessary. And this is a major trap many writers fall into when they first discover hypnotic writing.
What's the trap?
They assume they should abandon logic entirely and just write flowery poetry about feelings.
Right, which doesn't sell anything either.
Exactly. That is a misunderstanding of how the brain makes purchasing decisions. The facts are critical, but the sequencing is everything.
Sequencing.
Yes. The facts only matter after the emotional mental image has successfully captured the reader's attention and created desire.
So it is emotion first, logic second, always.
Always. Human beings decide to buy based on emotion, and they justify the purchase based on logic.
That makes so much sense.
If you lead with the fact that batteries are included, nobody cares because you haven't yet made them want the vibrating pen. There is no emotional drive.
Right.
But if you lead with the vivid story of melting away agonizing neck tension during a stressful workday, they suddenly want that relief.
And once the desire for relief is established, their logical brain kicks in as a defense mechanism.
Yes. It starts looking for reasons to say no. It says, wait, is this going to be a hassle? Am I going to have to buy batteries? Is it going to break?
And that is the exact moment you deploy the fact.
Exactly. Rugged metal construction, batteries included.
Now, the facts aren't boring data points. They are objection handlers.
They remove the logical friction from the emotional desire you've already successfully created.
This changes everything about how we should approach communication.
It really does.
If you are listening to this and trying to figure out how to apply it, the takeaway is profound. You must learn to translate your product, your service, or your pitch from a list of dry facts into a relatable sensory experience.
You have to do the translation work for the reader.
If you are selling complex accounting software, you are not selling 256-bit encryption and automated ledger syncing. Those are just specs.
Right.
You are selling the of tax season being completely finished in 10 minutes, without a panic attack, without fear of an audit.
That's a perfect example.
You are never selling the rugged metal construction. You are always selling the
And achieving that translation requires you to step completely outside of yourself, which brings all of these concepts together into a single, cohesive philosophy.
Yeah, let's tie this all together.
If we look at everything we've discussed, avoiding the trap of ego copy, understanding the mechanics of waking hypnosis, and painting mental images of benefits rather than listing features, they all point toward one central truth about human connection.
Let's synthesize this. We started with the $20 bribe that failed miserably because the writer was obsessed with his own time and his own ego.
All right.
We moved to Wesley Wells and the revelation that waking hypnosis is about capturing attention so completely with mental images that the outside world fades away.
Yeah, the simulation machine.
And we proved it with the massage pen, showing that sensory relief outperforms dry facts every time. What is the soul of this methodology?
The soul of this material is the realization that hypnotic writing is not about mind control.
It's not a trick.
No, it's
Yeah.
not about manipulation or tricking vulnerable people into buying things they don't want. True hypnotic writing is about radical empathy.
Radical empathy. That completely flips the traditional sales model on its head.
It really does.
It turns it from a transaction into an act of service.
It requires the death of your own ego as a writer. You have to ruthlessly suppress your urge to brag about your patented technology or your rugged metal construction.
Which is hard to do.
It is. But instead, you must fully adopt the reader's ego. You have to step into their shoes, deeply understand their daily frictions, their anxieties, and their desires.
And then you use carefully crafted mental images to guide them into a waking trance where they can mentally rehearse and physically feel the benefit of your offer before they ever make a decision.
You are serving them by communicating entirely in the language of their own internal experience.
And once they feel understood on that profound sensory level, The transaction is just the natural, logical byproduct of that connection.
Exactly.
And that is exactly why the $20 bill failed. The sender tried to buy attention without offering a single ounce of empathy.
They paid for the stage and then used it to shout into a mirror.
Wow, what a great way to put it, shouting into a mirror.
It's exactly what ego copy is.
Now that you know how to avoid the ego trap, and you understand the mechanics of planting sensory mental images to create a waking trance, what happens when we scale this up?
Oh, it gets so much bigger than a pen.
What happens when you take a terrible, failing piece of professional writing and run it through this exact psychological translation process?
We are going to leave that mystery for you to ponder until our next deep dive into the material, where we will look at a major real-world case study.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to test this theory in your own life today.
I love a practical test. What should we be looking for?
Well, as you go through your day, I want you to think back to the very last thing you purchased online. It doesn't matter if it was a book, a kitchen gadget, or a piece of software.
Okay.
Think about the exact moment you decided to click buy. Ask yourself, were you really buying the physical object based on its specifications?
Did you buy it for the rugged metal construction?
Or were you actually just buying the mental image that the copywriter successfully planted in your head? Did you buy the pen or did you buy the ah?
I guarantee it was the
I bet it was too. And I bet if you check your mail today, you'll look at the junk in a whole new light. Till next time, keep diving deep. Imagine someone handing you a simple one-page letter. You sit down, you start reading, and, well, before you know it, you've completely lost track of time.
Right, the ambient noise of the room just kind of fades out.
Exactly. Your heart is beating just a little bit faster, your breathing is fundamentally changed, and almost involuntarily, you're reaching for your wallet.
It sounds wild when you put it like that.
I mean, is it magic? Is it some sort of sinister mind control? Or is it just, hypnotic writing?
It's an incredibly powerful image, isn't it? And it's a very real psychological phenomenon, which is crazy to think about. What we're doing in this deep dive today is unpacking exactly how that state is achieved.
Right. And to do that, we have an incredible stack of materials in front of us. We're looking at neurological research on reading habits. We've got cognitive psychology case studies. And primarily, we were diving deep into Joe Vitale's framework for hypnotic writing.
Yes, specifically focusing heavily on what he calls the stop, do this first principles. It's chapter 2 of his work, and it's basically the foundation of everything else.
It really is, yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out how anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to sell a product, a blogger building an audience, or just, someone trying to write a highly persuasive email, can ethically bypass a reader's mental filters.
Yeah, ethically being the key word there. We want to understand how to build instant intimacy and structure words that compel people to actually take action.
Definitely.
Because we are exploring how to guide human attention, not how to override free will. If you understand the mechanics of how the brain consumes written information, you can start fighting against your reader's natural defenses and, well, start working with them.
Okay, let's unpack this right from the start, because that word hypnosis, it immediately brings up a ton of baggage.
Oh, absolutely.
When you hear it, your brain goes straight to, like, a guy in a velvet tuxedo swinging a pocket watch.
Right, or people clucking like chickens on a stage in Las Vegas.
Exactly. But that is absolutely not what we are talking about here, is it? We really need to establish what this actually means in a literary context.
Not at all. We have to completely redefine hypnosis for this context. The source material is talking about what early psychologists, people like Dr. James Braid, called waking hypnosis.
Waking hypnosis.
Yeah, and waking hypnosis is fundamentally anything that holds your attention so completely that the rest of the world just fades away. You aren't asleep.
Right.
You aren't unconscious or unaware. In fact, it's the exact opposite. You are in a state of extreme hyperfocus.
Right. I think everyone has experienced this without realizing it. I mean, it's like when you are so deeply lost in a great movie that someone can be shouting your name from the kitchen.
And you literally don't hear them.
You literally do not process the sound of their voice. Or, to bring it to a more modern, everyday experience, think about doom scrolling on a smartphone.
Oh, that's the perfect example.
You open an app just to check one thing, you look up, and an hour has entirely vanished. The phone completely hijacked your attention. You were in a trance.
That is the absolute perfect modern equivalent. And Milton Erickson, who is arguably, the most influential hypnotherapist of the 20th century, he realized something profound about this.
What was that?
He realized that everyone walks around in their own spontaneous trance states all day long. We are not constantly in a state of objective awareness.
Oh, wow.
We are all hypnotized by our own inner monologue, our financial worries, our to-do lists, our anxieties about the future.
So we're basically sleepwalking through our stress.
Exactly. So when we talk about hypnotic writing, the goal isn't to put someone to sleep. The goal is to wake them up from their current default trance, that cloud of daily worry, and invite them into a new trance.
The trance that you have intentionally designed.
Precisely.
Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned how we designed that trance, because here's where it gets really interesting for me. I was going through my notes on the sources, and they mentioned this thing called the Agatha Christie Project.
Oh, yes, this is fascinating.
I had no idea this happened, but it blew my mind. So scientists from 3 leading universities actually took 80 of Agatha Christie's novels and fed them into a computer.
Oh, 80 of them, yeah.
They wanted to analyze her sentence structures, her pacing, her vocabulary, to figure out why she is the best-selling fiction writer of all time. And they found out she wasn't just a great storyteller.
Oh, she was doing something much deeper.
She was basically a neurological hacker. She was a literary hypnotist.
What's truly fascinating here is the specific biological mechanism they uncovered. The researchers discovered that Christie repeatedly used specific, incredibly common, unpretentious words.
Right, simple stuff.
Words like she, yes, girl, kind, smiled, suddenly. But it wasn't merely the selection of the words. It was the rhythm, the pacing, and the repetition of them.
Okay, wait.
The computer analysis showed that her specific arrangement of these words literally triggered the release of serotonin and endorphins in her readers' brains.
Wait, let me stop you right there, because this is where we need to dig into the mechanism. How does reading the word girl, or yes, trigger serotonin? What is actually happening in the brain's processing center to cause a chemical dump just from reading a common pronoun?
It's a great question.
I mean, I read the word yes in corporate emails all the time, and I certainly don't get an endorphin rush.
It's a fantastic question, and it comes down to a concept called cognitive ease.
Cognitive ease, right?
When you read complex jargon or convoluted, passive sentences, your brain has to expend significant metabolic energy to decode the meaning. That creates cognitive strain.
Which is why reading legal documents makes you want to take a nap.
Exactly. And that strain can actually trigger microdoses of cortisol, the stress hormone. You feel tired reading it. But Christie did the opposite.
How so?
By using familiar, simple words and very rhythmic, predictable patterns, she drastically reduced the cognitive load on the reader's brain.
Ah, so it's not the word itself, it's the frictionless experience of reading it.
Exactly. When the brain processes information with zero friction, it feels safe. It feels relaxed.
That makes a lot of sense.
And when the brain feels safe and relaxed while being gently stimulated by a narrative, it rewards you. It releases serotonin, which stabilizes mood and brings pleasure, and endorphins, which act as a mild, natural opiate. She was constructing an environment of extreme cognitive ease.
She literally created a chemical addiction to her books.
Yeah.
That is wild. That's why people call them unputdownable.
Yes.
She wasn't just writing a mystery. She was actively pushing neurological buttons.
She was. And this completely reframes what writing actually is. It proves that your writing isn't just a passive vehicle for conveying information. It is actively competing for attention on a chemical level.
What, you're competing against their biology?
The goal of hypnotic writing is to intentionally use your words to guide people into that highly focused, pleasurable, low-friction mental state. Because when they are in that state, their defenses drop, and they become incredibly receptive to your message.
But here is the challenge, and this is where I want to push back on the application of
Okay,
that.
go for it.
If our readers are already in a trance of their own daily worries, they are stressing about their mortgage, they are thinking about an argument they had with their spouse, they're wondering what to make for dinner, that is a powerful trance.
It is. It's very sticky.
How do we ethically snap them out of that high anxiety trance and invite them into our low-friction trance? We can't all just write murder mysteries.
That brings us directly to the core of the overarching theme we're exploring today, which is the battle against your own ego.
The ego, right.
The stop, do this first principle from the chapter states that to snap someone out of their trance, you cannot just yell at them with corporate jargon. You cannot just list a bunch of features about your product.
Which is what everyone does.
Yes. But you have to get out of your own ego and step entirely into theirs.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of the ego in writing. What does this actually mean in practice?
Well, think about most emails you get.
Because I think most business writing, most marketing copy, and even most internal company emails fail precisely because they are entirely focused on the writer. The ego is driving the bus.
Always.
It's all, we have been in business for 20 years, or our synergistic paradigms lead the industry, or I am thrilled to announce my new product. It's so stiff, and frankly, it's boring.
And beyond being boring, it is completely ineffective. The secret here is what Vitale calls the intimacy secret.
The intimacy secret.
Right. The fundamental rule of commerce and persuasion is that people buy from and are persuaded by people they like and trust. Period.
True.
When you hide behind a stiff professional mask, when you use the royal we and lean on corporate buzzwords, you are building a psychological wall. You are protecting your own ego from vulnerability, but you are alienating the reader.
You're pushing them away.
You have to strip that mask away and write the way you actually speak.
The sources had this incredibly illustrative and hilarious example of what not to do, which highlights this perfectly. I couldn't stop laughing at this when I was reading the case studies.
Oh, the FedEx one.
Yes. It's a critique of a piece of direct mail from a website called stupid.com, and the copy truly lived up to the name. So the writer literally attached a crisp $20 bill to a FedEx package.
Which is a bold move.
As far as pattern interrupts go, sending someone cash via overnight shipping is a brilliant attention grabber. You have successfully snapped them out of their daily trance.
You have their absolute undivided attention in that moment. There's no doubt about that.
Right. But then the letter completely drops the ball because the ego takes over. It rambles on and on about the writer's own achievements.
It completely loses the plot.
It says something along the lines of, I have an offer that I would like to share with only you. Let me explain why I am sending this to you. It's totally self-serving.
It is.
The reader doesn't care why you are sending it. They care why they are receiving it.
Exactly. The writer is entirely trapped in their own ego. They paid $20 just to talk about themselves. Now contrast that ego-driven failure with another case study in the text involving a hypnotherapist named Pete Siegel.
Okay, let's hear it.
Siegel's original copy for his services was a wall of passive, writer-centric text. It asked these weak, meandering questions like, is your confidence where it should be?
Oh, it's terrible.
It felt like a lecture from a mildly disappointed guidance counselor.
Yeah, it was very much, are you doing all you can do? It felt like homework. It was causing that cognitive strain we talked about.
Exactly, lots of friction.
But then the text shows how this copy was rewritten to be hypnotic. It makes it punchy, active, and focused 100% on the reader's desires.
Right.
Instead of asking vaguely about their confidence, the rewrite screams, gain iron will, self-confidence, destroy your inner limits.
Notice the massive shift in energy there. The rewrite is intimate, it is direct, and it speaks directly to the reader's hidden emotional desires.
It really grabs you.
It utilizes the intimacy secret by dropping the clinical veneer. It isn't evaluating the reader, it's empowering them. There is a fantastic quote from Mark Twain in the text that sums this up perfectly.
What's a quote?
He said, if we were all taught to speak the same way we were taught to write, we'd all stutter.
I love that quote so much. We absolutely stutter on paper. But let me challenge this concept because I know exactly what you are thinking right now if you are listening to this.
Sure, bring it on.
I hear you. But if I am a B2B consultant pitching a Fortune 500 CFO whom I have never met and I write with this radical intimacy, if I use slang or casual phrasing or drop my professional guard, I am going to get escorted out by security or at least sent straight to the spam folder.
That's a comment here.
There has to be a line between intimacy and inappropriate familiarity, right?
Yeah.
Won't high-end clients think I'm not taking the business seriously?
That is a very valid pushback, and it highlights a common misconception about what professionalism actually is. Professionalism doesn't mean being boring, robotic, or devoid of personality. It means being effective, respectful, and clear. But to your point about the Fortune 500 CFO, the tactic here isn't to send them an unedited stream of consciousness. The takeaway is about how you approach the first draft.
Okay, walk me through that. How do we bypass the corporate filter in the draft?
The text suggests a psychological trick. Write your very first draft as if it is a personal letter to a good friend. Literally start the page with, Dear Mom, or Dear John.
Okay, literally typing that out.
Yes, just pour your enthusiasm, your natural cadence, and your authentic voice onto the page. Explain to Mom why this software is going to save the CFO's company millions of dollars.
I see where this is going.
When you do this, you automatically bypass the stiff corporate jargon. You naturally use shorter sentences. You inherently focus on clear benefits rather than abstract features.
Okay, so I'm not actually sending an email that says, "Dear Mom, you won't believe the synergy we can provide."
Exactly. You are going to edit out the overly casual mush later. You will delete "Dear Mom." You
No.
might tighten up the slang.
Polish it up.
But the underlying architecture of that draft, the intimacy, the rhythmic pacing, the authentic enthusiasm, and the rapport that you built by imagining a loved one, that remains intact.
That is so smart.
That underlying structure is what builds trust, even with a Fortune 500 executive. They are still human beings, and their brains still crave cognitive ease.
That makes perfect sense. It's like you're sneaking past their professional defenses by just being a relatable human being in the underlying rhythm of the text.
Precisely.
But here is where the source material throws a massive curveball. It's a complete paradox.
Oh, the marketing hierarchy.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're talking all about how to write this beautifully intimate hypnotic copy, but the text explicitly states that before you write a single word of it, you have to accept that your copy is actually the least important element of your marketing.
Yes, this is a crucial reality check, and it's the ultimate trap of the ego believing that your brilliant writing is the center of the universe.
It hurts my writer's ego just hearing it.
I know. But the success of any persuasive campaign relies on a strict, unyielding marketing hierarchy. It's a formula. List plus offer plus copy equals success.
Okay, list plus offer plus copy.
Or in modern digital terms, traffic plus deal plus hypnotic writing. And out of those three elements, the copy, the words themselves, ranks dead last in importance.
Let me use an analogy here to see if I'm tracking the logic. It's like opening a hot dog stand.
Okay, I like it.
It really doesn't matter if you have the most hypnotically written menu in the world. You could have Agatha Christie herself write the descriptions of your hot dogs.
Right.
But if you are selling vegan tofu dogs, which is your offer, and you set up your stand directly outside a butcher's convention, which is your list or your traffic, you are going to fail.
You're going to fail miserably.
You have the wrong list, the wrong offer for that crowd, and no amount of hypnotic wording is going to force a convention of butchers to buy a tofu dog.
That is the perfect analogy. If the audience isn't hungry for what you have, your words are powerless. You cannot create desire out of thin air. You can only channel existing desire onto your product.
That makes total sense.
The text illustrates this beautifully with what it calls the stampede secret.
Oh, the stampede secret. This story is wild, and it perfectly proves the point about the hierarchy. So the authors of the study send out an email to a highly targeted list.
A very specific list.
They knew this specific audience was deeply interested in driving web traffic. The email simply teased a great offer, a new book about RSS traffic generation, and what happened. The audience rushed to the website to buy it before the actual sales letter was even written.
Exactly. The demand for the offer from that specific list was so high that the copy was entirely irrelevant. The authors literally had to throw up a placeholder web page.
Just a blank page.
It was basically a blank page that just said, "We don't have a sales letter ready yet, but so many of you are asking for this. If you can't wait, just click here to buy." And it sold like crazy.
They just turned the shopping cart on and got out of the way. The list and the offer did 100% of the heavy lifting.
It's incredible.
There's another example in the sources, too, that requires a bit of context, but it's brilliant. It's about a guy named Brad Yates who practices EFT. Now, for anyone listening who might not know, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques.
Also known as tapping.
Right. It's this alternative therapy where you physically tap on specific meridian points on your body while reciting phrases. And the goal is to calm the amygdala and release deep emotional trauma or psychological blocks.
Right. It's a very specific niche, and people who seek it out usually have highly specific, deeply rooted pain points.
Exactly. So Brad Yates had this highly targeted audience, a list of people who were actively struggling with deep emotional self-sabotaging blocks around money and success.
A very hungry audience.
They were a hungry audience in pain. He created an offer, a simple audio program designed specifically to tap away money blocks. Because the offer matched the audience's specific psychological needs so perfectly, the sales copy didn't have to be a masterpiece of persuasion.
No, it didn't.
It just had to clearly present the offer and gently guide them to the checkout.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it teaches us a vital, humbling lesson about business. You must secure a hungry audience and develop a genuinely great product first.
Before you write a single word.
Yes. Hypnotic writing is not a magic wand that can save a terrible business model. It is the ultimate multiplier. It can take a good offer, present it to a great audience, and multiply the conversion rate by 10. But any number multiplied by 0 is still 0.
So, if I play devil's advocate for a moment,
Please do.
why are we spending an hour doing a deep dive into hypnotic writing if it's objectively the least important piece of the puzzle? Why not just do a deep dive on product development?
Because eventually you have to communicate. Once you do have the right audience and the right offer, the copy is the only bridge between the customer's desire and your solution.
Ah,
You still have to move them to physically click buy or subscribe or approve, and to compel that physical action, you have to push the right emotional buttons.
which brings us to the mechanics of action. How do we actually move a human being to take an action they wouldn't have taken otherwise? Historically, the answer to that has been pain, right?
Yes, historically.
The text goes all the way back 2,500 years to Aristotle. Aristotle created a rhetorical formula that marketers still use today. His structure was exordium, narratio, confirmation, paratio.
Which translates roughly to, well, shock them to get their attention, state the painful problem they are experiencing, offer your solution as the confirmation, and outline the benefits of taking action.
Right. The old school Madison Avenue advertising logic is that pain is the ultimate motivator. Hit them where it hurts, agitate the wound, make them feel the absolute sting of their problem, and then, only then, offer your product as the cure.
That's the classic model.
But the source text argues for a massive, revolutionary shift in this thinking. It argues that pleasure and love are actually significantly stronger and much more sustainable motivators than pain. Vitale simplifies the new formula away from Aristotle into 3 simple steps: promise, proof, price.
And this isn't just a philosophical shift, it's a biological one. Yes, pain and fear trigger the amygdala and create an immediate fight-or-flight response. It gets attention. But Vitale is arguing for the power of the brain's reward centers.
This is a huge aha moment for me in the material. To illustrate why pleasure beats pain, the text uses a brilliant pop culture analogy, the movie 50 First Dates.
It's a perfect example.
For those who haven't seen it, Adam Sandler's character falls in love with Drew Barrymore's character, but she has severe short-term memory loss.
Right, she forgets him every day.
Every single time she goes to sleep, she forgets him. So every single day, he has to wake up, find her, and make her fall in love with him all over again. Now think about the pain of that. The rejection, the emotional exhaustion, the sheer agony of the person you love looking at you like a stranger every single morning. It's immense pain.
It would crush most people.
But he keeps doing it, day after day, year after year. Why? Because his desire for love, his pursuit of that pleasure and connection, completely overrides the agonizing pain.
It completely dwarfs it. And in marketing, we often forget this. If we rely solely on pain, we are just adding to the cortisol and negativity in the world. We are causing cognitive strain.
Right, going back to the cognitive ease thing.
Exactly. For example, instead of using fear and saying, if you don't buy this ergonomic chair, your chronic back pain will eventually cripple you, you won't be able to pick up your kids, and your life will be ruined.
That makes the reader want to shrink away.
Yeah, that makes me want to close the tab and go take a walk.
It's too heavy.
So you flip the script. You use the promise of pleasure. You say, imagine waking up completely refreshed, feeling flexible, energized, and ready to tackle your day with 0 friction. You focus entirely on the promise of the pleasure they deeply desire.
Okay, I love the positivity of that, but I have to challenge this premise.
Let's hear it.
Look at the real world. Look at the 24-hour news media cycle. Look at political campaigns, regardless of the party. They rely almost entirely on fear, outrage, and pain to get clicks, viewership, and votes. And it works.
It definitely works in the short term.
Fear is literally an evolutionary survival mechanism. Our brains are hardwired to look out for danger before we look for pleasure. If pain is so undeniably effective at grabbing human attention on a primal level, aren't we handicapping our marketing by focusing exclusively on pleasure?
It is a profound question, and you are right about the biology. Fear gets immediate primal attention,
Yeah.
but you have to look at the long-term consequences of that mechanism.
Okay.
Fear triggers the fight-or-flight response, which means the reader is operating from a place of panic. When you sell with fear, you might get the initial sale, but you also create a subtle resentment.
Oh, makes sense.
The customer feels manipulated, anxious, and they often develop a desire to escape the messenger. They associate you with the anxiety.
Oh, so they might buy the chair, but they'll unsubscribe from your email list immediately after because you stress them out.
Precisely. When you focus on pleasure, when you are script writing your reader's dreams, you engage the prefrontal cortex and the dopamine reward pathways. You foster connection, aspiration, and growth.
It's a completely different relationship.
It is. The listener should audit their own messaging right now. Look at your last 5 emails or posts. Are you threatening your readers, or are you inspiring them? Swapping out pain points for player triggers builds long-term brand loyalty rather than a one-time transaction built on panic.
That is a phenomenal distinction. Short-term transaction versus long-term loyalty. Okay, so we are making the shift. We are moving from threatening our readers to script writing their dreams.
Yes.
But to do that effectively, we have to understand the environment where this is taking place. We have to understand how they are physically and mentally consuming the text. You have to get inside what the text calls their command center.
And this is perhaps one of the most powerful psychological insights in the entire text. It fundamentally changes how you view a written word. When people read silently, they're usually sub-vocalizing or mouthing the words in their minds.
Right.
They hear your words, but they hear them in their own inner voice.
That is so true. It's wild to think about. I am literally doing it right now as I read my notes on the desk.
Yeah.
I don't hear your voice. I hear my own voice reading the words inside my head.
Exactly. And because they are hearing your words in their own voice, you have achieved something incredible. You are literally inside their head. You have successfully invaded the command center.
That's a little spooky, but very cool.
It is, but, and this is the crucial caveat, as they read, they aren't just passively accepting your words like a blank slate. Their brain is highly active, constantly firing off skeptical questions to protect them from being taken advantage of.
Right, defense mechanisms.
The text jokingly calls these Bart Simpson's 3 questions. Who cares? So what? What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? YFNM. It's often called the most important radio station in the world, and everyone is tuned in to it 24/7.
Everyone.
So if we are inside their head, but their inner skeptic is throwing up these YFM roadblocks, how do we handle those objections if we aren't physically in the room to answer them?
You use a technique called the hypnotic dialogue process. As you write, you have to imagine you are having a real-time, face-to-face conversation with a highly skeptical, slightly impatient reader.
Okay.
You have to proactively anticipate their objections, and you answer them immediately in the text before they even fully articulate the doubt in their own mind.
It's exactly like playing chess against yourself. You have to anticipate your opponent's next move, the reader's objection, and counter it instantly.
Exactly.
For example, if I write a sentence that promises a huge benefit, like, this software will double your leads in 30 days, I know the reader's brain just instantly said, yeah, right, prove it. Sounds like a scam.
Yes, that YIM filter is firing.
So my very next sentence needs to be, now you're probably thinking this sounds way too good to be true, and frankly, I would be skeptical too. But let me show you the raw data from our last 3 case studies. You validate their skepticism and immediately neutralize it.
That is a perfect execution of the dialogue process. And you can supercharge this process by combining it with the power of storytelling.
Storytelling, right.
The cognitive scientist Roger Schenck has a foundational theory that human beings literally think in terms of stories. Facts, figures, and bullet points activate the analytical part of the brain, the neocortex, which is inherently skeptical and looks for flaws.
Makes sense.
But stories bypass that analytical skepticism entirely because we are biologically hardwired around the campfire to listen to narratives.
There is a fantastic anecdote in the sources that proves Schenck's theory perfectly. It's a story about the billionaire media mogul Ted Turner.
Oh, this is a great one.
If a PR writer just puts out a press release that says, Ted Turner is a massive environmentalist who cares deeply about the Earth, the reader's YFM filter immediately goes, sure, whatever, who cares? Just another billionaire trying to buy good PR. It hits the analytical brain and gets rejected.
Right, because it's a claim without a narrative.
Exactly. But the writer didn't do that. Instead, he told a highly specific story. He wrote about riding shotgun in a pickup truck with Ted Turner on his ranch. Suddenly, Turner slams on the brakes, throwing them both forward.
Really paints a picture.
He gets out of the truck without saying a single word, walks over to the muddy ditch, picks up a discarded crushed soda can, throws it in the back of the truck, gets back in the driver's seat, and just keeps driving.
What's fascinating about this approach is that the story acts as a Trojan horse for persuasion. The writer never tells the reader that Turner is an environmentalist.
Right, he doesn't have to.
He shows the action and lets the reader's brain do the work. And because you, the reader, drew that conclusion yourself based on observing the narrative, you will never argue with it. It is a psychological law. People rarely argue with their own conclusions.
That is so incredibly powerful. People rarely argue with their own conclusions. And every great hypnotic story like that has what the text calls a turning point message, or a TPM.
Yes, the TPM.
It's the central philosophical core of the story that shifts the reader's perspective. The text uses the movie The Rookie to explain this. It's a movie about an older high school science teacher who decides to try out for Major League Baseball.
Yes, starring Dennis Quaid, right.
Right, and there's this pivotal scene with his father. His father looks at him and delivers the TPM. He says, "It's fine to do what you want to do, but sooner or later, you have to do what you were meant to do." That one single line is the turning point message. It shifts the entire narrative from a selfish pursuit of a dream to a broader philosophical calling.
The takeaway for you listening here is highly actionable. When you sit down to write, you must explicitly answer what's in it for me as early as possible in the text.
Answer it immediately.
But whenever you can, use stories and turning point messages to let the reader arrive at the conclusion you want them to reach, rather than forcing the conclusion down their throat with bullet points.
Okay, this is all brilliant theory. We know what we need to write. We need intimate, pleasure-focused stories that answer objections before they happen. But here is the brutal reality of being a writer or an entrepreneur.
The blank page.
We know all this. We sit down at our desk, we open a blank document, we stare at that blinking cursor, and we absolutely freeze. Complete, paralyzing writer's block. The words won't come. Why does this happen when we know exactly what to do?
To understand the paralysis of the blinking cursor, we have to look at the psychology of performance, specifically W. Timothy Galway's concept of the inner game.
The inner game.
Galway recognized that inside your mind, there isn't just one consciousness trying to write. There are essentially two distinct selves constantly battling for control whenever you try to perform any task. He calls the first one Self One, which is the editor.
Self One. The editor. I know this voice intimately. This is the paranoid, hypercritical voice of your 6th grade English teacher, standing over your shoulder, terrified that you're going to use a dangling participle or bad grammar, or that you'll sound stupid.
Precisely. Self One is entirely focused on rules, safety, mitigating risk, and avoiding mistakes. Its primary goal is to protect your ego from embarrassment.
And it does a great job of keeping me from writing anything.
Exactly. But then you have Self Two. Self Two is the master. It's the unconscious creative genius that flows naturally. Self Two is the part of you that can effortlessly tell a hilarious, highly engaging, perfectly paced story to your friends over dinner without having planned a single word in advance.
The text describes the physical manifestation of Self One taking over as stuttering on paper. And it is such a visceral description.
It really is.
It's when you type a sentence, you look at it, you hate it, you delete it, you type half a new sentence, you backspace, you stare at the screen. You are trying to edit while you are actively trying to create, which is the equivalent of trying to drive a car with the parking brake fully engaged. You just burn out the engine. So the million-dollar question is, how do we silence Self One?
Galway offers a specific 3-step inner game method to bypass the editor. First, you set a clear goal or intention. What exactly are you trying to convey? Don't focus on the words, focus on the feeling or the message.
Okay, focus on the feeling.
Second, you focus on being aware of the present moment. For instance, focusing entirely on the physical feeling of your fingers hitting the plastic keys or the sound of the keyboard. You give the conscious mind a menial task.
Distract the editor.
And third, you simply trust what happens. You let Self Two take over and flow.
I'm going to be honest, I need a physical hack for this. Meditation and trust are great, but it's way too easy for Self One to creep back in if I can see the screen and see a red squiggly line under a typo.
Oh, those red lines are legal to flow.
They are. And thankfully, the sources actually provide a brilliant, highly actionable physical tip for this.
They do, and it is a radical departure from how most people work. Turn off your computer monitor.
Just shut it off.
Literally push the power button on the screen. Or, if you are on a laptop where you can't do that, turn the brightness all the way down until the screen is completely pitch black. Or, simplest of all, just close your eyes and don't open them.
I love this hack. You write entirely blindly. You literally type out your first draft without being able to see the words appearing on the screen. It solves the problem mechanically.
It does.
Because if you can't see the words, your inner editor Self One literally cannot critique them.
No.
You bypass the critic entirely and let Self Two just pour the raw, intimate, enthusiastic draft onto the page.
It requires a massive leap of faith, especially the first time you try it. You have to accept that the resulting draft will be messy. It will be full of typos, grammatical errors, and disjointed thoughts.
Total garbage fire of a draft.
Yes. But it will have something much more important than perfect grammar. It will have life, it will have energy, it will have the natural cadence of your speaking voice.
Okay, so you open your eyes, you turn the monitor back on, and now you have this messy, blind, brilliant, typo-ridden first draft from Self-2. What next?
Yeah.
Because you absolutely cannot publish or send that.
No, you cannot. And this is the moment where you finally invite Self-1, the editor, back into the room.
Time for the parking brake.
Yes, this is the stage Vitale calls warp speed editing. Editing is where the true hypnotic polish is applied to the raw material. You have to ruthlessly trim the fat and consciously inject what the text calls the 5 secret laws of hypnotic persuasion.
Okay, we need to slow down here and dedicate some serious time to unpacking these 5 secret laws, because this is where the actual alchemy happens. If the blind draft is the raw metal, these 5 laws are the forge. Let's go through them.
Let's do it. The first law is engagement. You must actively involve the reader in the text. You don't just talk at them, you pull them in, usually by asking direct questions that they are forced to answer in their own head.
Like, have you ever felt like you're working twice as hard for half the money?
Exactly. Their brain automatically says yes, and now they are engaged in the dialogue.
The second law is choice. This is fascinating because it touches on human autonomy. You never want the reader to feel cornered or pressured, because that triggers the flight response.
Right. Nobody likes being backed into a corner.
So you give them options, but frame them to your advantage. Like, you have a choice. You can close this email and keep suffering with the same bottleneck in your business, or you can click the link and let us solve it for you today. You give them the power to choose.
Exactly. Preserving their autonomy reduces resistance. The third law is ego, and this requires a delicate touch. You want to flatter the reader, but it must be sincere.
Right, not just blowing smoke.
You make them feel smart for reading your material, for recognizing the problem, for taking the time to seek a solution. Because you're a savvy investor, you already know that. It strokes the ego without sounding like blatant manipulation.
The fourth is reward. Give them a dopamine hit for taking action, a bonus, an unexpected extra, or a clear, immediate benefit. If you sign up today, I'll instantly send you our private resource guide.
And the fifth, which is arguably the most powerful of all, is curiosity. Humans are psychologically incapable of resisting a mystery.
This ties into the Zeigarnik effect, right? The psychological principle that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones.
Precisely. When you open a loop of curiosity in a reader's mind, it creates a subtle cognitive itch that they simply have to scratch. You tease a secret or a surprising fact, the one common food that is secretly destroying your focus, and their brain cannot rest until it finds the resolution.
That itch is so real.
You use curiosity to pull them relentlessly down the page.
So you inject those 5 laws into the blind draft. But you also have to be brutal about cutting the excess. The text shares several extreme editing tactics to sculpt the draft. The first one is violently named, cut off their heads and feet.
It sounds aggressive, but it's an incredibly practical rule. It simply means deleting the entire first paragraph and the entire last paragraph of your draft.
Because almost invariably, the first paragraph is just you, the writer, warming up your typing fingers. It's throat clearing. You're just getting into the rhythm.
That's usually what it is.
And the last paragraph is usually you lingering, repeating yourself, and saying slow goodbye. The real meat, the actual hook, almost always starts in paragraph 2. And the strongest call to action is usually in the second to last paragraph.
It's a great heuristic. Another, much more extreme tactic comes from a famous editor named DeWitt Scott. He was known for his incredibly tight prose. He actually used a computer program that automatically deleted every 6th word of his draft.
That is absolute insanity. It would turn the text into gibberish.
It does turn it into gibberish initially, but the point is brilliant. By forcing the text to break, it forced him to look at the gaps and aggressively justify the existence of every single word he chose to put back in.
Oh, wow.
It makes you realize how many weak filler words, like really just actually we use as crutches.
It forces a hyper-awareness of word economy. Then there is Stephen King's method for editing, which is much more market-focused.
Tell us about that one.
He says you finish your draft, print out 10 copies, and give them to 10 trusted friends or beta readers. If one person hates a specific chapter or doesn't understand a paragraph, you can ignore them. It's just subjective taste.
Right, one person is just an opinion.
But if all 10 friends hate that chapter or all 10 get confused by the exact same explanation, you have to rewrite it. The market has spoken. You don't get to argue with the audience's confusion.
And finally, the ultimate rule of editing is that you have to embrace the case against perfection. You cannot spend 6 months tweaking one single sales letter or one blog post. Perfectionism in writing is almost always just fear of judgment disguised as high standards.
Ouch, that's a tough truth.
As the science fiction legend Ray Bradbury proved, quantity leads to quality. Bradbury famously wrote over 2,000 short stories. And out of those 2,000, about 200 are considered timeless masterpieces.
It's like sculpting a block of marble. You absolutely need the wild, heavy, uninhibited swings of the hammer first to get the general shape out of the stone. That's self-2 writing the blind, messy draft.
Right.
And then, only then, do you need the fine, delicate chisel that's self-1 editing, injecting the 5 laws, and polishing the prose. You really need to internalize this and stop chasing perfection on the first try. Finish the draft blindly, cut the fluff brutally, read it out loud to catch where your breath naturally stumbles, and then get it out into the world. Let the market test it.
If we step back and tie all of these concepts together, from waking hypnosis and Agatha Christie's serotonin triggers, to escaping your ego with the intimacy secret, from focusing on pleasure instead of pain, to bypassing the inner critic and writing blindly, we arrive at the true soul of this source material.
The soul of hypnotic writing.
Yes. Hypnotic writing is not about deceit. It is not about manipulation, coercion, or mind control in a sinister sense.
Right, because as we established with the hot dog stand analogy, you literally cannot hypnotize a butcher into buying a tofu dog. You can't force someone to want a terrible product they have no desire for.
Exactly. Hypnotic writing at its absolute core is the ultimate act of radical empathy.
Radical empathy. I love that.
It requires you to step completely out of your own ego, your own needs, and your own desire to sound smart. It requires you to bypass your internal critic so you can be vulnerable and authentic.
Which is hard to do.
It is, but it requires you to speak directly, intimately, and respectfully to the secret desires, the pursuit of pleasure, and the unspoken objections of your reader. When you combine a truly great offer with an empathetic, perfectly paced story that answers the reader's YIFM, what's in it for me, your words don't just communicate data. They become an irresistible force.
Radical empathy on paper. I mean, that really says it all. So here's a final provocative thought for you to take away and mull over.
All right, leave them with a good one.
The next time you find yourself utterly captivated by an email, an advertisement, or even just a simple text conversation where you completely lose track of time and the world fades away, stop and ask yourself, am I just organically interested or have I been hypnotized? And more importantly, now that you know how the magic trick works, which of their invisible triggers can you steal for your very next sentence?
What if I told you that you could tape a crisp, brand new $20 bill to a letter, send it via FedEx so it absolutely requires a signature, guarantee that it gets opened, and still, like, completely fail at getting the recipient to care about a single word you wrote?
I mean, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right?
Right.
Because you essentially bought their attention.
Right. And getting someone's attention is actually the easiest thing in the world. You can light a firework in a library and get attention.
Yeah, that'll definitely work.
But holding that attention, keeping the person engaged, and actually persuading them to take action, that is an entirely different art form. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we are exploring the mission-critical concepts inside Joe Vitale's hypnotic writing. We're going to figure out why you absolutely cannot bribe someone to read terrible writing, how to systematically put your reader into what he calls a buying trance, and, well, the surprising, deeply human psychology behind actual persuasion.
It really is surprising, too.
It is. For anyone out there trying to write a better email, land a client, or just get someone to see the world from your perspective, you are about to learn why stepping out of your own ego is the ultimate non-negotiable shortcut to making your words irresistible.
Yeah, and it requires a massive shift in how you view communication because, we spend the vast majority of our lives trying to figure out how to project our own voice louder and further.
Definitely.
We think if we just use a bigger megaphone, or in this case, a FedEx envelope, and literal cash people, we'll magically care about our problems. But what we are going to tear apart today is the exact opposite of that instinct.
Which is fascinating.
Right. It's about the mechanics of resonance. It's about understanding the psychological filters of the person on the receiving end and realizing that until you bypass their inherent biological self-interest, Every single word you write is just background noise.
I want to jump straight into the physical reality of that $20 bill story because the mechanics of it perfectly illustrate the trap we all fall into.
Oh, it's such a great example.
So, the author Joe Vitale is sitting in his office, and a FedEx package arrives. From a purely mechanical marketing standpoint, the sender did everything right to break through the initial noise. It's FedEx. It bypasses the secretary. It bypasses the junk mail pile.
It demands to be looked at.
Exactly. So Vitale opens it. Attached to the very top of a 2-page letter is a real, legitimate $20 bill. The sender has achieved the holy grail of modern communication. He has the undivided, curious attention of a busy expert. He basically bought the spotlight.
He did.
But the moment Vitale actually starts reading the words on the page, the entire thing just self-destructs.
The implosion is immediate. And, the reason it fails is due to a profound psychological blindness on the part of the sender.
Blindness is a good word for it.
Yeah, because this young entrepreneur mastered the mechanics of delivery, but completely failed at the mechanics of empathy. I mean, he got the envelope open,
Yeah.
but the very first sentences demonstrate the most catastrophic mistake in writing. He wrote entirely from within the prison of his own ego. The physical $20 bill was a promise of value, but the text that followed was a massive withdrawal of value.
The actual lines from this letter are breathtaking when you read them from the perspective of the person holding the paper.
They're so bad.
So bad. The writer starts the letter by stating his age. He says, "I am 28 years old." Right there, what does that do? It signals a plea for paternalistic sympathy.
Yeah, he's trying to establish himself as young and hungry, but he's making it all about his identity.
Right. Then he immediately lists his personal financial burdens. He writes, "I need to make $10,000 this month."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He follows that up with, "I'm totally broke right now." And the absolute climax of this bizarre pitch, the reason he wants Vitale to partner with him and launch a massive joint venture to Vitale's highly curated list of wealthy clients is this. He says, "I want to visit my grandparents in Fort Worth and have enough money to enjoy it."
It's just wild. When you dissect those sentences, you see exactly how the human brain processes incoming information. Well, the human brain is a survival machine. It is constantly scanning the environment, asking one fundamental subconscious question. How does this affect my survival, my status, or my resources?
That makes sense.
So when Vitale reads, "I need to make $10,000 this month," his brain immediately recognizes a threat to his resources. The sender isn't offering a mutually beneficial business opportunity. He's presenting himself as a parasite.
Ouch. But true.
The sender successfully hijacked attention with a bribe, but the entire proposition was an unvarnished display of neediness. He effectively said, here's my financial anxiety, here are my unfulfilled desires, here is my literal vacation itinerary. Now deploy your hard-earned resources to fix my life.
Okay, let's unpack this. The analogy that comes to mind is going on a high-stakes first date. You want to make an impression, so you bring an incredibly expensive, rare bouquet of flowers. You hand them over, you get the attention, you get the smile.
A great start.
Right. But the moment you sit down at the table, you spend the next 45 minutes talking about your crippling credit card debt, how bad your apartment smells, how your car is making a weird clicking noise, and exactly what the person sitting across from you needs to do to fix your life.
That is painfully accurate.
You secured the date with the flowers, but your words just guaranteed you will be eating alone for the rest of the year. The flowers, the bribe, cannot compensate for a total lack of relevance to the other person's experience.
That analogy hits on the exact mechanism of why this fails. The flowers and the $20 bill are external stimuli. They create a momentary spike in dopamine and curiosity.
Right, quick.
Exactly. But persuasion is an internal process. Persuasion requires the listener's brain to actively participate and agree with the narrative you're presenting. And what was the actual result of that catastrophic bad date of a letter?
Oh, this is the best part.
Vitale sent the $20 back. He didn't even keep the bribe. He sent it back out of sheer pity because the writer admitted he was completely broke. The writer failed to create any forward momentum because he ignored the singular filter operating in every reader's mind. What is in it for me?
He didn't even attempt to camouflage it. He just assumed his desperate desire for 10 grand was somehow a compelling narrative for a total stranger.
And that assumption is the core of what we call ego copy.
Ego copy.
Yes. The writer was experiencing his own pain so acutely that he assumed his pain was universally fascinating. But effective communication requires you to completely vacate your own ego and inhabit the reader's worldview. What are their anxieties? What do they desire?
Which he didn't do at all.
Not even the little. This young man wanted Vitale to endorse him to a list of highly valuable clients who pay retainer fees of $5,000 to $25,000. But he never once articulated a vision of how this partnership would elevate Vitale or how it would solve a problem for Vitale's clients. He merely broadcasted his own desperation.
So for you listening right now, before you hit send on your next pitch, or write an email to a colleague, or draft a proposal, you have to subject your words to a very harsh audit. You have to ask, are you writing about what your business needs to survive, or are you writing about the transformation your audience actually wants?
That is the million-dollar question.
Vitale uses a brilliant concept here. He says you have to act as a translator. You have to take the raw material of your ego copy and translate it into reader copy. And here's where it gets really interesting, because that doesn't just mean swapping out the word I for the word you. It means shifting the entire dimensional reality of the text.
The translation process is rigorous. Think of your initial draft, your ego copy, as being written in a dialect that only you speak.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, so your ego says, our development team just spent 6 months building this new software update, and we are incredibly proud of the new data architecture.
Right, which sounds like every corporate press release ever.
Exactly. That is purely ego copy. It is a monument to your own effort. To translate that into reader copy, you have to run it through the filter of the user's survival and status. The translation becomes, you can now automatically export your monthly reports in 3 seconds, meaning you get to close your laptop and be home in time for dinner.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, you are translating the technical feature of your hard work into the visceral, emotional benefit of their lived experience.
I love the mechanics of that. You are the translation engine between your company's internal milestones and the customer's daily reality. But knowing that we have to avoid writing about ourselves naturally pushes us to figure out what the right approach actually looks like in the wild.
Right, putting it to the test.
And the source material provides a fascinating empirically tested example, a controlled study in copywriting that measures exactly how the psychological shift performs.
The controlled study is where the theory becomes indisputable fact. Because, in the direct response world, a controlled study means pitting 2 entirely different psychological approaches against each other to sell the exact same product to the exact same demographic and measuring the conversion rates.
So, no guesswork.
Exactly. And the product they were testing was an audio program called Money Beyond Belief, created by an expert named Brad Yates.
Right. This is a program specifically engineered to help people identify and overcome their subconscious mental roadblocks around wealth and success. So they run a split test with 2 vastly different web pages. Let's look at Exhibit A first.
Look at it.
Exhibit A took the highly logical, traditional corporate route. It focused almost entirely on the creator. It listed Brad Yates' credentials, his background, his years of experience. It broke down the dry, mechanical facts of the program, how many audio modules there were, the length of the recordings, the format. It was the standard, here is the item, here is the person who made it, here's the price, please buy it, approach.
Which, if you look around, is how the vast majority of businesses operate.
Exactly.
They operate on the flawed assumption that human beings make purchasing decisions based on rational data and feature lists. They assume people are buying the physical or digital information, but no one buys information. Information is abundant and cheap.
That is so true, especially now.
What people actually buy is liberation. They buy the promise of freedom from whatever internal or external friction is ruining their day. Exhibit B completely abandoned the feature list and went straight for the friction.
Exhibit B ignored the dry facts entirely. It didn't start with credentials. It started with the reader's private shame. It directly addressed the deep, often secret limiting beliefs that the audience was harboring about wealth.
This is where it gets really vulnerable.
It really does. It brought up highly specific, uncomfortable phrases that people whisper to themselves, like, money is the root of all evil, or people with a lot of money are inherently corrupt, or the most painful one of all, I fundamentally do not deserve to be wealthy. It called those thoughts out, directly and specifically, right on the page.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism at play in Exhibit B. By putting those exact phrases on the page, the copy isn't just selling a product anymore. It is validating the reader's most private internal monologue.
It's like reading their diary back to them.
Exactly. It meets the reader exactly where they're currently suffering. When a reader sees their own irrational, hidden fears articulated clearly in a piece of text, a profound shift happens. The brain assumes that if the writer understands the problem with such terrifying clarity, the writer must also possess the solution.
Wow. That's a huge leap of trust.
It is, but it works. The copy didn't judge them for having these limiting beliefs. It simply acknowledged the mental architecture they were trapped in. It made the reader feel completely seen.
And the promise the copy made wasn't just, listen to these 6 audio CDs and read this workbook. The copy made a highly specific, manageable promise focused entirely on liberation. It said that with just 5 minutes and 49 seconds a day, the listener could begin to clear these blocks.
Shrinking the commitment.
Right. It shrank the commitment down to something that felt safe while keeping the emotional promise massive. And the hard data backing this up. Exhibit B, the emotional, belief-shifting, highly intimate page, outperformed Exhibit A, the logical, fact-based page, by over 60%.
A 60% lift in conversions is astronomical in any industry.
It really is.
And what it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt is that when you bypass the mechanical details of what you are selling and instead speak directly to the emotional friction your prospect is experiencing, you completely bypass their critical, skeptical filters. You aren't just grabbing attention, you are actively dismantling the false beliefs that prevent them from trusting you. You are doing the heavy psychological lifting for them.
But I have to push back here because this brings up a massive friction point.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you are listening to this and you run a B2B software company, or you sell landscaping services, or you run a bakery, are you supposed to be acting as a therapist? I mean, calling out people's deep-seated feelings of unworthiness and dismantling their private fears feels like we are crossing a line from business communication into clinical psychology.
Well, it is a line that makes many traditional business owners deeply uncomfortable for sure. But there is a quote in the source material from psychologist John Burton that recontextualizes this entirely. He states, quite plainly, that therapy is sales.
That is a wildly provocative statement. I mean, most therapists would probably recoil at the idea that they're salespeople.
Oh, they might recoil, but let's examine the mechanics of what a therapist actually does. A therapist doesn't physically operate on a patient. A therapist uses words to help a client reframe their perspective. They help the client identify a limiting belief, a narrative that is no longer serving them, and they persuade the client to buy into a healthier, more productive version of their own reality.
So the transaction is the belief change.
Exactly. The transaction in therapy is exchanging an old, painful belief for a new, liberating one. In ethical, effective writing, you are engaging in the exact same process. You are selling someone a better version of their own life by facilitating a shift in how they perceive their problems. You are identifying the false beliefs your customer holds, whether it's about your industry, the complexity of the task, or their own capabilities, and you are providing a concrete pathway out of that limitation.
Okay, let's ground the mechanics of that in a scenario you might actually face. Let's say you are selling a high-end fitness and nutrition coaching program.
Perfect example.
The standard Exhibit A approach is to list your credentials. I have a master's degree in kinesiology, I provide customized macronutrient spreadsheets, and I do weekly Zoom check-ins. That relies entirely on logic.
And it's boring.
Right. But your potential client's actual limiting belief, the hidden script running in their head, is likely, I have failed at every single diet I've ever tried, my metabolism is broken, and I am biologically destined to fail again. If you don't address that belief, your kinesiology degree is totally worthless to them.
Exactly, because they don't believe it will work for them.
Right. Exhibit B copy would say, you aren't broken. You haven't failed because of a lack of willpower. You've been playing by a set of restrictive dietary rules designed to make you fail. Here is how we rewrite the rules so your biology works for you, not against you.
Boom, that's it.
You identify the fear, you dismantle the blame they place on themselves, and you instantly establish yourself as their advocate, not just a vendor.
Precisely. You have demonstrated radical empathy, which is the ultimate solvent for skepticism. You have successfully bypassed their ego defenses by validating their struggle. But this is the massive. But validating their pain and earning their trust is only the first half of the equation.
What's the second half?
Well, once you have cleared away the limiting beliefs, you still have to present your actual solution.
Yeah.
You have to make the product itself sound incredibly compelling. You have to close the gap between the relief they now feel and the action you want them to take. And to understand the mechanics of how to write about a product that way, the text points us to an industry that relies entirely on the manufacturing of desire and the suspension of disbelief. Magic.
I found this section of the deep dive absolutely fascinating because magicians face the ultimate marketing paradox. Think about the mechanics of selling a magic trick. You are selling an illusion, an impossible moment. But you are shipping a physical product.
Right, like a prop.
Exactly. And if you tell the customer how the physical product actually works, if you tell them it's just a hollowed out quarter or a piece of invisible fishing line, the magic instantly dies and they won't pay for it. So how do you write copy for a product when the primary rule is that you absolutely cannot describe the features?
It's a huge challenge.
You have to sell the sizzle entirely without ever showing the steak. The source text brings up these old magic catalogs, specifically the Denny and Lee Magic e-newsletter, as absolute masterclasses in hypnotic copywriting.
It is the purest distillation of benefit-driven writing, because they are strictly forbidden from relying on features. If you describe the reality of a magic trick, you are just selling cheap plastic and string. The reality is mundane. So instead, the copywriters for these catalogs sell the aspiration. They sell the feeling the buyer will experience when they perform the trick. They sell the dream of being a flawless, mysterious, beloved entertainer who commands the awe of the room.
Let's look at the exact wording they use, because it is brilliant. The text provides an example of a trick called the final answer. It is fundamentally a trick involving a lemon.
Just a lemon.
Just a lemon. And it costs $400. $400 for a lemon trick. If you try to sell that using features, you say, here is a rigged knife and a gimmick. Nobody's paying $400 for that. Listen to the dimensional shift in the language they use instead. They write, it's a precision-made piece of machinery designed for stealth.
Oh, it's so good.
And then they elevate it even further. They say, objects this clever are usually reserved for James Bond.
Look at the psychological triggers being pulled in those two sentences.
Mm-hmm.
By using the phrase precision-made piece of machinery, they are borrowing authority from engineering and aerospace. They are elevating a prop into an artifact.
An artifact, yeah.
And by invoking James Bond, they are tapping directly into an archetype of sophistication, danger, and elite exclusivity. They are taking the incredibly mundane secret and wrapping it in a narrative of espionage. It makes the buyer feel like they aren't just buying a trick, they are purchasing access to a highly classified elite tier of performers.
And then the copy does something even smarter. It anticipates the exact logical objection the reader is forming in their mind as they read. If you are reading a description of a lemon trick, your brain is immediately trying to solve it. You think, yeah, but the audience will want to examine the lemon. They will want to cut it themselves.
Of course they will.
And right there, exactly when that thought forms, the copy reads, yes, the spectator can actually cut the lemon open.
That is the essence of psychological pacing. The writer is anticipating the cognitive resistance of the reader. As you read a piece of persuasive text, you are not passively absorbing it, you are subvocalizing. You are essentially having a silent debate with the author in your own mind. You are generating counter-arguments.
It's an active process.
Exactly. If the text anticipates your exact counter-argument and answers it perfectly on cue, the effect is staggering. It creates the illusion that the writer is literally reading your mind. It gets the reader into a habitual yes mindset by systematically dismantling every logical barrier to purchase before the reader can even fully articulate the objection. It builds a vivid mental simulation of the performance, complete with the audience gasping in awe while totally neutralizing the reader's skepticism.
So the practical translation for you, applying this to your own work, is that you have to aggressively stop handing people the technical manual for your product. Nobody wakes up in the morning eager to read a spec sheet. You have to take the cold, hard features of what you do and translate them into visceral, thrilling benefits. Vitale gives a seemingly simple example of this translation in the text.
Yeah, the brochure example.
Right. He was reviewing a brochure for a service, and the original copy asked the reader, when was the last time you felt okay? And Vitale crossed it out and changed it to, when was the last time you felt fantastic?
The difference between okay and fantastic isn't just a matter of synonyms. It's a matter of neurological impact. AK is a baseline state of mere survival. It doesn't trigger any emotional response. It doesn't paint a picture. Fantastic is a state of thriving. It demands an emotional memory to be recalled. Words carry specific energetic and emotional frequencies.
That's powerful.
Or consider the other example Vitale provides, where he had to translate a highly academic, dry psychological concept about suppressed emotions into something the general public would actually care about. The standard academic way to write it would be suppressing emotions is psychologically harmful and can lead to neurosis.
Which is accurate, but it is dead on arrival.
Totally dead. So Vitale translated it to suppression is building bombs.
Yeah.
When you bury an emotion, you bury it alive.
When you bury an emotion, you bury it alive. That is a physical punch to the gut. It forces your brain to generate an immediate, suffocating, visceral image. It takes an abstract psychological theory and turns it into a horror movie happening inside your own chest.
Yeah, it's intense.
It is dramatic, it is highly memorable, and it makes it impossible to stop reading. It literally pulls you into the text.
And that concept of pulling the reader in, of getting them so engrossed in the vivid imagery and the logical flow that the rest of the world fades away, is the absolute bedrock of what Vitale calls waking hypnosis. This is the point in the deep dive where we transition from simply analyzing good marketing copy to understanding how the clinical psychology of hypnosis is directly applied to the written word.
The term waking hypnosis requires some serious unpacking because the word hypnosis carries so much cultural baggage. When most people hear that word, they immediately picture a guy in a velvet suit on a stage in Las Vegas, swinging a pocket watch, snapping his fingers, and making accountants cluck like chickens.
Right, a total cliche.
It feels like manipulation or literal mind control.
We have been thoroughly conditioned by stage entertainment to view hypnosis as a hostile takeover of the mind. But clinical hypnosis, the actual psychological phenomenon, is entirely different. It is not sleep, and it is not mind control. It is defined simply as a state of highly focused, relaxed awareness. You experience this naturally all the time.
Like when?
Well, have you ever been driving down a highway, lost in thought, and suddenly realized you don't remember the last 10 miles?
Oh, yeah. Highway hypnosis.
Exactly. That is a state of waking hypnosis. Your subconscious was driving the car while your conscious mind was focused elsewhere. Or when you were reading an incredibly gripping novel and someone calls your name from the same room and you literally do not hear them, you are in a waking trance. The text has completely consumed your attentional bandwidth. But here is the critical rule for achieving this state with a reader. You cannot force it. It requires an unspoken voluntary agreement. You have to meet the reader exactly where their internal monologue is already operating.
The legendary direct response copywriter Robert Collier wrote extensively about this. He had a rule that you must always enter the conversation that is already occurring in the prospect's mind. You have to find a point of contact with their immediate, pressing interests to flag their attention the very second they read your first line.
It's all about relevance.
Right. If your reader is pacing their kitchen at 2 in the morning, terrified about how they're going to pay their mortgage, your opening line absolutely cannot be a cheerful history of how your company was founded in 1995. That creates an immediate disconnect. You have to acknowledge the 2 a.m. panic. You have to match the frequency of their anxiety before you can hope to change it.
It is a timeless principle of human psychology, and it applies far beyond marketing. Think about the mechanics of a masterpiece like Shakespeare's The Tempest.
I love that we are bringing Shakespeare into a masterclass on copywriting, but it makes perfect sense. He was essentially writing the ultimate persuasive copy to keep a rowdy audience from throwing tomatoes.
Exactly. He had to capture and hold the attention of a highly distractible crowd. Look at the opening scene of The Tempest. Shakespeare does not start with a long, slow, boring monologue explaining the complex political climate of Milan. He doesn't start with exposition.
What does he start with?
He starts with a violent, terrifying shipwreck. Thunder, lightning, sailors screaming, the ship splitting apart. He grabbed the audience's attention by aggressively meeting their biological need for immediate novelty, excitement, and drama. He paced their desire for action. Once he had them completely gripped, once they were in that state of focused, wide-eyed awareness, then he could slow the pace down. He commanded them to sit and listen to the complex exposition in the next scene, and they willingly did so because he had earned their trance.
He earned their attention by giving them exactly what their brains craved in that moment, before he demanded the cognitive effort of paying attention to the plot.
And this highlights a truly fascinating physiological reality about the act of reading itself. The reader's mind is a completely enclosed command center. When people read, they don't just process symbols visually, they subvocalize. They literally read silently to themselves, forming the words in their minds. Micro-movements even occur in the vocal cords.
Wait, really?
Yes. When you write a compelling, resonant piece of text, you are quite literally putting your voice, your cadence, and your commands inside the reader's head. They're generating your thoughts using their own internal voice.
That is slightly terrifying, but incredibly profound when you think about it. If you are sitting there reading this text right now, you are generating these words inside your own mind. You are doing the work of bringing the text to life. So the practical application for creating this state of waking hypnosis is all about sequence. Whether you are starting a video, writing an email, or delivering a pitch, you must begin by acknowledging the exact mental state, the exact problem, or the exact emotion the listener is currently experiencing. You gain their agreement first. You write something that makes them nod and say, yes, that is exactly how I feel. You establish the rhythm of agreement, and then, only after you have established that tether, do you lead them toward your solution.
The clinical term for this is pacing and leading. You match their current reality, you pace them. You validate their fear, their anger, or their desire. And once you are entirely in sync, you gently begin to lead them to a new reality, a new perspective, and ultimately a new action.
Pacing and leading. Got it.
But understanding the mechanics of how to lead them brings us to the final, most heavily debated question in all of persuasion. We know how to bypass the ego. We know how to dismantle false beliefs. We know how to induce the focused state of waking hypnosis. But what is the ultimate emotional fuel required to get them to actually move? What triggers the final decision to pull out a credit card, sign a contract, or change a behavior?
We are entering the granddaddy of all behavioral psychology debates, the battle between pain and pleasure.
It is the fundamental binary of human motivation. Throughout all of recorded history, there have been two primary activators of human behavior, the stick and the carrot. Moving away from pain or moving toward pleasure. Traditional advertising, which traces its roots all the way back to Aristotle's ancient formula for rhetorical persuasion, relies heavily, almost exclusively, on pain.
It's everywhere.
The traditional accepted method is to identify the prospect's problem, rigorously rub their nose in the misery of that problem, agitate the pain until it feels unbearable and catastrophic, and then dramatically present your product as the only possible relief.
It is the classic high-pressure insurance salesman tactic. They sit at your kitchen table and say, what exactly happens to your spouse and children if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? The bank takes the house. Your kids can't go to college. They are out on the street. Sign this policy right now to stop that from happening.
Very grim.
It is brutal. But Vitale argues for a completely different approach. He outlines an epiphany he had while watching a very unexpected piece of media, the Adam Sandler romantic comedy 50 First Dates.
It seems like a bizarre source for a revelation on copywriting, but his observation is structurally brilliant. In the film, Adam Sandler's character falls in love with Drew Barrymore's character, who suffers from severe short-term memory loss. She forgets him every single time she goes to sleep.
Right, every single day.
So he has to orchestrate elaborate, exhausting scenarios to make her fall in love with him anew every single day. He endures massive emotional pain. He faces constant rejection, endless frustration, and mathematically terrible odds. But why does he do it? He is not acting out of a desire to escape a pain. He isn't running away from anything. He is driven entirely, relentlessly, by the pursuit of pleasure, connection, and profound love.
Vitale watches this and realizes that pleasure or love is actually the most potent, enduring motivator of human behavior. But I am going to push back on this pretty hard.
Go for it.
Is this just naive, feel-good optimism? Because if you look at the reality of the world, pain is the dominant currency. Turn on any cable news channel. Look at how political campaigns are run. Look at the insurance industry or doom scrolling on social media. Everyone from politicians to algorithms uses fear and pain because fear is incredibly efficient. It makes people click immediately. It makes people vote defensively, and it makes people buy out of panic. Are we really supposed to abandon the most effective, proven tool in the psychological shed just because it feels unpleasant?
That is the absolute crux of the debate, and it requires us to separate short-term reaction from long-term persuasion. Does pain work? Unquestionably. Pain works exceptionally well for generating immediate, desperate, reactionary behavior. If your house is actively on fire, the intense pain of the heat will motivate you to run out the door faster than anything else.
Right, it's a survival reflex.
But pain is exhausting. When you use pain to sell, the buyer resents you. They associate your brand with their own anxiety. Pleasure, on the other hand, is the ultimate driving force of human endurance and long-term commitment. To put it simply, pain creates refugees who are just trying to escape a bad situation. Pleasure creates pioneers who are willing to endure hardship to build a beautiful future.
Pain creates refugees. Pleasure creates pioneers. That is a brilliant distinction. It explains why fear-based marketing burns out so quickly.
Precisely. As the legendary copywriter Eugene Schwartz once said, "You are literally the scriptwriter for your prospects' dreams. You are chronicling their idealized future." If you want a lifelong customer, if you want to build a brand or a movement that people actually love and defend, you do not achieve that by terrorizing them.
Makes total sense.
Think about the fitness industry again. You can sell a diet program by screaming, "Fat is ugly," and you're going to die of a heart attack. That uses pain and deep shame. You might get a panicked sale, but you also create a resentful, demoralized customer who will likely quit. Or you can sell the exact same program by scriptwriting the dream. Imagine feeling 35 pounds lighter, waking up with boundless energy, and effortlessly running around the yard with your kids. You focus entirely on the beautiful, specific outcome they desire.
You script their future. So the practical takeaway for the listener is a complete revision of the classic formula. Instead of using Aristotle's old formula of problem, promise, proof, price, where you spend the first quadrant deliberately agitating the prospect's pain, you drop the pain entirely. You streamline it into a three-step engine driven by pleasure: promise, proof, and price.
Exactly. You start immediately with the promise. You focus 100% of the attention on the beautiful outcome they want. Do you want to learn to play the guitar fast and easily so you can entertain your friends?
Then what?
Then you move to proof. You provide the testimonials, the logical mechanisms, the guarantees that make that beautiful promise feel safe and believable. And finally, the price. The clear, unambiguous call to action telling them exactly what small step to take next to claim that future. You frame your entire communication around the beautiful outcome your listener deeply desires, rather than needlessly adding to the misery and anxiety of the world. It is not only a more elevated way to conduct business, but for building long-term loyalty and genuine influence, it is vastly more mathematically powerful.
It fundamentally removes the sleaze from selling. You aren't forcing someone into a corner. You are inviting them to step into a better version of their own life. So, looking at the entire architecture of Chapter 3, from the failed FedEx package to the magic catalogs to the Adam Sandler epiphany, how do we synthesize all of this into one core operating principle?
Well, if we synthesize everything we have deconstructed today, from rejecting the sheer blinding arrogance of that ego-driven $20 letter, to understanding the immense power of erasing someone's false beliefs through radical intimacy, to realizing you must sell the James Bond aspiration instead of the physical lemon, and finally, shifting from a paradigm of pain to a paradigm of pleasure, it all points to one undeniable truth.
Which is?
The soul of hypnotic writing is radical empathy. True persuasion has absolutely nothing to do with manipulation, dominance, or clever parlor tricks. It is about understanding your reader so deeply and caring about their desired outcomes so authentically that you can seamlessly script their dreams and guide them step by step toward the pleasure they're seeking.
It all comes down to getting out of your own way, translating your internal ego into their external desires, and meeting them exactly where they are already standing. If you are listening to this right now, I want you to consider a final thought. If the human mind can be so easily transformed by a simple shift in perspective, like realizing that a stray dog isn't just a dirty mutt, but a rare collectible just waiting for the right description to be adopted, what other limitations in your own life, your own business, or your own relationships are just sitting there waiting for you to become a better copywriter?
The way we describe our reality dictates the reality we experience. It is the most powerful tool we possess.
Keep your eyes peeled, because on the next deep dive, we are going to explore the mechanics of how Agatha Christie literally addicted millions of readers to her books by using highly specific word patterns that triggered verifiable chemical responses in the human brain. It is mind-bending, and you definitely won't want to miss it. Until then, keep diving deep. So what if the secret to making people actually want to buy from you isn't about perfectly polished, corporate-sounding writing?
Right, like what if it's the exact opposite?
Exactly. What if it's about letting your weird, sort of unfiltered, everyday personality just kind of bleed onto the page?
It completely flips the script on everything we are traditionally taught about professional communication. I mean, we have this deep-seated, almost Pavlovian conditioning that formal clinical writing equals credibility.
Oh, 100%.
We think we have to sound like an academic paper or, a corporate press release to be taken seriously. But in reality, that sanitized perfection is the exact thing that's putting your audience into a coma.
Right. And if you are listening to this right now, maybe you're staring at a blank Google Doc trying to write an email campaign or a pitch for your startup or even just a cover letter, that paralyzing feeling.
Oh, yeah, the dread.
The dread, exactly. You start second-guessing every single word. You wonder if you sound, quote-unquote, professional enough. So today, we are going to dismantle that fear entirely. We are taking a deep dive into Joe Vitale's concepts around what he calls the great intimacy secret, and it's basically his absolute masterclass on human motivation.
Yeah, and the thesis here is actually incredibly liberating. It's the idea that hypnotic, truly irresistible writing doesn't come from a thesaurus or a corporate-style guide. It comes from profound, unapologetic intimacy.
Unapologetic intimacy. I love that phrasing.
Right, so we're going to explore why dropping the stiff corporate speak, choosing the psychology of love over the psychology of pain, and answering 3 inherently selfish questions will fundamentally change how people respond to your words.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, Vitale hits us with this concept of the great intimacy secret. And I have to admit, when I first hear the phrase hypnotic writing or even just persuasion, my mind instantly goes to something kind of dark.
Like manipulation.
Yeah, like we're talking about manipulation or some Jedi mind trick to force people to hand over their credit cards. But the argument here is actually the exact opposite.
It is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Because the foundation of true persuasion isn't manipulation at all, it's rapport. It is the simple, undeniable reality that people buy from people they like, and more importantly, people they trust.
Right.
Think about it. When you read a piece of text that feels heavily vetted by a legal team or, a PR committee, what happens? Your guard immediately goes up.
Oh, absolutely. My brain categorizes it as marketing material, and I tune it out completely. I'm actively looking for the unsubscribe button.
Exactly. You recognize it as a pitch. And human beings have developed this incredibly robust immune system against pitches. But when we read something that sounds like a living, breathing human being just talking to us, flaws, quirks, and all our defenses lower.
We relax a bit.
We do. And we enter into what Vitale calls a waking trance.
A waking trance. Wait, let's back up for a second. What exactly do we mean by that? Because that sounds a little bit, I don't know, mystical.
It does, but it's actually a very common neurological state.
Huh?
Have you ever been driving on the highway, maybe listening to a really engaging story on the radio or a great deep dive, and suddenly you realize you missed your exit by like 3 miles?
Oh, all the time. You kind of snap out of it and realize you literally have no memory of the last 5 minutes of driving.
Yes. That is a waking trance.
Yeah.
Your conscious critical faculty, the part of your brain that is always scanning for threats, analyzing data, putting up walls, it's temporarily bypassed because you are so deeply absorbed in a narrative or a connection.
Wow. Okay. That makes sense.
And in writing, you trigger a waking trance not by using complex vocabulary, but by creating intense personal intimacy. You want the reader to feel like they're sitting across a coffee table from you, just having a chat.
Yeah. There is a Mark Twain quote brought up in the context of this idea that I think perfectly diagnoses the disease we all have when it comes to writing. Twain said, if we were all taught to speak the same way we were taught to write, we'd all stutter.
That is just profoundly true, isn't it?
It really is.
Think about the physical act of sitting down to write. The moment your fingers hover over the keyboard, this massive invisible pressure just clicks on.
It's the inner critic. It's like my 10th grade English teacher suddenly materializes right over my shoulder with a red pen, just waiting for me to mess up.
Precisely. The inner critic wakes up and suddenly all this baggage comes rushing in. You start worrying about passive voice, dangling modifiers.
Sounding smart, sounding authoritative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what happens? You filter your natural thoughts through all these anxiety-ridden layers. By the time the words actually hit the page, they are completely stripped of all their life and energy. The process totally drowns out your natural creative voice.
It becomes incredibly sterile.
But when you are just speaking to a friend, you bypass that filter entirely. You are loose, you are animated, you just communicate.
Which leads to this absolutely brilliant million-dollar secret used by some of the most highly paid copywriters in the world. If you are struggling to write a sales page or a landing page or even just a really important email, don't write it.
Right, just stop typing.
Literally call a friend, get them on the phone, tell them you just need to explain a product or a service you're working on, hit record on your phone, and just passionately explain it to them for 10 minutes.
Like a normal conversation.
Exactly. Tell them why you love it, why it works, what the problem is. Then you take that audio, run it through a transcription tool, and boom, that's your first draft. By doing that, you capture your loose, unedited, completely authentic voice.
The mechanism behind why this works is so fascinating. You are taking a high-stakes task writing to an anonymous, judgmental audience and replacing it with a low-stakes task.
Yeah.
Just talking to a buddy.
You take the pressure off.
You completely remove the performance anxiety. When you talk to a friend about something you are genuinely excited about, your pacing is natural. You use analogies spontaneously. Your enthusiasm is palpable. And that raw energy translates perfectly to the transcribed page.
I really love that trick, and I've actually tried it a few times. It works wonders for getting unstuck. But I want to play devil's advocate here and push back on this a little bit.
Please do.
So I get the appeal of being natural, but if I just transcribe a phone call with my buddy, it's going to be full of ums, likes, weird tangents, maybe some slang. Is there a risk of being, too casual?
That's a fair point.
It feels a bit like showing up to a venture capital pitch in your sweatpants. Like if I'm selling enterprise cybersecurity software to a chief information officer, I can't just write like I'm texting my college roommate. So how do we draw the line between being intimate and just being flat out unprofessional?
That is a very valid friction point, but I think we need to separate voice from structure. The goal of the intimacy secret isn't to be sloppy, and it certainly isn't to abandon all editing.
Right.
The goal is to be genuine. It's about writing in your authentic voice, whatever that happens to be. If your natural enthusiastic voice includes a specific type of dry humor or a unique industry perspective, let that shine through.
So it's not about being overly casual, it's about removing the artificial mask.
Exactly. Think about your sweatpants analogy. You aren't showing up to the boardroom in sweatpants. You are showing up to the boardroom as your sharpest, most authentic self, rather than putting on a rented, stiff tuxedo that doesn't fit, makes it hard to breathe, and forces you to walk like a robot.
I love that.
If you are selling enterprise software, your authentic self still knows the technical jargon and respects the CIO's time. But you can explain the value of that software with the same conversational clarity and passion you would use if you were explaining it to a respected colleague over a beer.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's about finding the courage to not edit your humanity out of the text. So for you listening, what is the practical application here? It means you have permission to actually sound like yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
The next time you sit down to draft something important, try the transcription trick. Or just pretend you're writing a letter to one specific close friend. Literally type Dear Sarah at the top of the page and just let it flow.
And don't touch the backspace key.
Do not touch it. Do not edit while you are drafting. Just get that raw, intimate voice out of your head and onto the page. You can always clean up the grammar later, but you cannot artificially inject a pulse into a dead piece of writing.
That is the perfect way to frame it. And once you have unlocked that pulse, once you have that authentic, intimate voice flowing, we run into the next major hurdle. You have the vehicle, but what is the fuel?
Right.
What core emotion should that authentic voice actually tap into to move a reader to take action?
And this is where the conventional wisdom gets flipped on its head again. Because if you read most marketing textbooks or talk to, sales gurus, they will tell you that to make people move, you have to poke at their pain.
Always the pain.
Always. You have to find the thing that keeps them up at night, agitate that fear, really rub salt in the wound, and then position your product as the Band-Aid. But Vitale argues there is a much more powerful, positive force we should be harnessing.
Yeah, the reliance on pain is completely ubiquitous in marketing. And we should acknowledge why it does work in a sort of blunt force kind of way.
Yeah.
Think of the classic life insurance salesman. The strategy is often to paint this horrifying, vivid picture of your sudden death, your house in foreclosure, and your family left destitute.
It's terrifying. Just thinking about it makes me anxious.
It is. The underlying psychological logic is that pain forces an immediate biological response. Fear triggers cortisol and adrenaline. You want to escape the threat. But it's an entirely negative emotional state. You are motivating the buyer by making them feel awful.
But the deep dive here suggests that pleasure and love are actually the greatest, most sustainable human motivators. And to illustrate this, there's this fantastic, kind of unexpected analogy using the movie 50 First Dates.
Oh, yes. With Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore, which is actually a brilliant psychological case study if you look past the, romantic comedy tropes.
It really is. So if you haven't seen it, Drew Barrymore's character has a traumatic brain injury that causes severe short-term memory loss. Every single time she goes to sleep, her memory completely resets.
Right back to zero.
Exactly. And Adam Sandler's character falls in love with her. So every single day he has to pursue her, meet her for the very first time, try to win her over, and inevitably he faces the immense pain of her looking at him like a total stranger. He faces daily rejection, confusion, and just massive emotional exhaustion.
If human behavior was primarily driven by the avoidance of pain, he would quit on day 2.
Easily.
Because the pain of that situation is agonizing. To be forgotten by the person you love every single day, that is pure psychological pain.
Exactly. But he keeps doing it day after day against all logical odds. Why? Because his goal of pleasure, his deep love for her, and the joy of seeing her smile when she falls for him each day is so unbelievably powerful that it completely eclipses the pain of the process.
This brings in Kevin Hogan, a psychology and persuasion expert whose work really intersects with Vitale's here. Hogan posits something profound about the hierarchy of our internal drives. He argues that love isn't just a fleeting emotion, it's a deeply entrenched mindset.
The mindset. Oh.
Yes, and as a mindset, it possesses a gravitational pull stronger than any single passing emotion, including fear or pain. Historically, people will endure incredible, unspeakable hardship, cross oceans and battle empires to fulfill that hardwired human need to love, to be loved, and to experience profound pleasure.
Okay, so if love and pleasure are the ultimate, most powerful motivators, why is the business and marketing world so utterly obsessed with pain? Why is every ad I see trying to scare me into buying something?
Honestly, because relying on pain is a lazy cop-out.
Lazy. How so?
Well, it is incredibly easy to point out a problem and scare someone. It requires very little empathy, very little imagination, and almost no deep understanding of the customer's inner life.
That makes sense.
If I'm selling a security system, it's so easy to just say, burglars are coming for your TV right now.
Right. It takes 2 seconds to think of that.
Exactly. But love-based marketing, figuring out the true, deep pleasure triggers of your product, takes serious cognitive work. It requires you to intimately understand the specific joy, relief, or aspiration your prospect is longing to experience. You aren't just telling them what's broken in their life, you're taking on the difficult task of helping them vividly imagine the beautiful reality they actually want to inhabit.
Okay, let's test this. Let's bring in a hypothetical scenario. Let's say I'm selling accounting software for small businesses. It's really easy to use pain. Are you terrified of being audited by the IRS? Are your taxes a chaotic nightmare that will bankrupt you?
Right, the classic fear angle.
So how on earth do I use love-based or pleasure marketing for something as dry as accounting software?
That's a great test case. Think about the small business owner. What do they actually love?
Well, they don't love spreadsheets, that's for sure.
No, nobody does. They love their craft. They love the bakery they opened or the design agency they run. They love having Sunday mornings free to drink coffee with their spouse instead of crying over receipts at the kitchen table.
Oh, I see where you're going.
So, love-based marketing for accounting software sounds like. Imagine wrapping up your books on a Friday afternoon in just 15 minutes. Imagine the peace of mind of knowing your business is thriving and having your entire weekend completely free to spend with your family, doing what you actually love. We handle the math so you can handle the joy of your business.
Oh, wow. That is a completely different energy. It feels so much lighter. It makes me think of the fitness industry, too. Pain marketing is everywhere there. Aren't you ashamed of how you look? Aren't you terrified of having a heart attack before you're 50? Buy this gym membership.
Yeah, it's heavy, it's guilt-inducing. You might buy the membership in a panic, but you'll cancel it in a month because you associate the gym with shame.
Precisely. You associate the brand with the negative cortisol spike. But love marketing says, imagine waking up feeling light and powerful. Imagine having the limitless energy to run around the backyard with your kids on a Saturday afternoon without losing your breath. Imagine feeling proud and vibrant in your own skin.
Yes.
The latter feels so much more sustainable. It invites you into a positive vision rather than chasing you from behind with a stick.
It's the fundamental difference between moving away from something you hate versus moving towards something you deeply desire. Love-based marketing builds a lasting, positive, dopamine-driven association with your brand.
So the practical takeaway for the listener here is to audit your own communication. Look at the last thing you wrote to persuade someone. Were you chasing them with a stick, or were you inviting them into a dream?
That's a great question to ask yourself.
Shift the focus. Stop telling people what is fundamentally wrong with them. Stop rubbing their noses in their anxieties. Instead, reveal what there is to love about your solution. Sell the dream. Show them the pleasure that awaits them.
However, there is a catch here.
There's always a catch.
To truly show that love to your reader, to really sell that dream effectively, you have to deeply understand what they actually care about. You have to undergo a massive perspective shift. You have to get out of your own ego and climb completely into theirs.
Yes, and that brings us to the most brutal, unfiltered truth about human nature discussed in these concepts, which are referred to as the Bart Simpson questions.
I love this concept.
The cold reality is, every single person reading your text is inherently biologically selfish. When they look at your writing, they are not marveling at your beautiful prose. They are unconsciously acting like Bart Simpson, crossing their arms, looking defiant, and asking 3 very specific, skeptical questions. Who cares? So what? And what's in it for me?
It sounds kind of cynical to say everyone is selfish, but we have to view this not as a moral failing, but as a fundamental evolutionary survival mechanism.
Right, it's how we're wired.
Exactly. Our brains are bombarded with millions of bits of sensory data every single second. To avoid short-circuiting, we have a filter. And that filter only lets in information that directly impacts our survival, our status, or our comfort. We filter the entire world through our own immediate needs.
There is a great thought experiment for this. Think about the last time you were at a wedding or, a big family reunion, and someone sent you the big group photo that you were in. When you open that photo on your phone, whose face do you zoom in on and look for first?
It's universally the same answer.
It's my own face, 100%. I do not care if the bride looks beautiful. I don't care if my uncle is blinking in the background. I need to verify if my eyes are open, if my hair looks okay, and if I look good.
Yep.
Once I'm satisfied with my representation, then I will generously look at the rest of the people in the picture.
We all do it. There's no shame in it. And the crucial insight is that readers do the exact same thing with a block of text. They are scanning your words, rapidly looking for their own reflection, their own needs, their own problems, their own benefits. If they don't see themselves in the text immediately, they close the window.
And when you, as the writer, ignore that reality because you're too wrapped up in your own ego, it is an absolute disaster. There is a fantastic story that perfectly illustrates this. Joe Vitale talks about receiving a FedEx package in the mail. Now, think about the psychology of a FedEx package. When one shows up, it automatically bypasses your normal mail filter.
Right. FedEx implies urgency, importance, and real investment. You think, someone paid like $20 to get this in my hands overnight. This must be critical. It's not just another coupon flyer.
Exactly. You drop everything to open it. So he opens this highly anticipated envelope, and inside, clipped to the very top of a sales letter, is a crisp, real $20 bill.
Which, as a marketing hook, is incredibly aggressive and highly effective.
It's brilliant.
It absolutely guarantees the recipient will freeze and read at least the first line of that letter.
It is the ultimate attention grabber. I mean, if someone sends me $20, I'm reading whatever they wrote.
Right.
So he has the $20, he has the FedEx envelope, he is primed and ready. He starts reading, expecting something amazing. And the very first sentence of the letter says something along the lines of, I have a special offer that I would like to share with only you that will make me a giant stack of those $20 bills in the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Ugh. It is almost physically painful to hear how quickly that letter destroys its own potential. It's like watching a sports car crash into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour.
It really is. It's such a letdown. The writer spent all this money on FedEx logistics, gave away a $20 bill, orchestrated this perfect, flawless moment of undivided attention, only to make the letter entirely about what he wanted.
So selfish.
He wanted to make a stack of $20 bills for himself. He completely failed to answer the what's in it for me question for the reader. In fact, he essentially told the reader, what's in it for you is that you get to make me rich.
Which is the worst possible pitch.
The letter went straight into the trash because it was completely trapped in the writer's own ego.
And what's fascinating and honestly a bit terrifying here is how easily we all fall into that exact same trap. Maybe not with the literal $20 bill, but in our everyday communication.
Wow, for sure.
We get so intoxicated by our own product, the years we spent developing it, the intricate features, our company history, that we just assume the reader cares as much as we do. We forget that the reader does not care about your company's mission statement or your patented algorithm until you explicitly connect it to their daily life.
There's another great example of framing things around the audience's ego with the movie Arachnophobia.
Oh, this is a great one.
When that movie was first released, the studio billed it to audiences as a comedy thriller, and it totally flopped at the box office. People didn't know what to do with that framing. It didn't map onto their desires.
Right, because a comedy thriller creates cognitive dissonance. People want to know what emotional ride they are paying for when they go to the theater. Are they going to laugh, or are they going to be terrified? You can't be both at the exact same time, effectively, in marketing.
Exactly. It didn't answer their internal what's in it for me in a clear way. But when the studio realized the mistake, they pulled the marketing, retooled it, and re-released it, simply billed as a horror picture, and it became a massive success.
It's all about framing.
You cannot force your clever internal definitions onto the market. You have to frame things the way the audience already understands them and how they want to consume them.
It's very much like the martial art of Aikido.
Oh, I love this analogy. Break that down for us.
So, in a hard martial art like karate, You meet force with force. You block a punch by whacking the opponent's arm with your own. But in Aikido, you never meet force directly. You use the opponent's existing momentum.
Right.
If they rush at you, you step aside, grab their arm, and guide them in the direction they were already going, just slightly altering the path to throw them off balance. In writing, ego-driven marketing is karate. It's you aggressively whacking the reader over the head with your features and your brilliance.
And hoping they submit.
Exactly. But Aikido writing means you start exactly where the reader's mind already is. You agree with their current state, their current desires, their current selfish needs, and then you gently redirect that existing momentum toward your solution.
Okay, wait. Let me pause you right there, because I'm spotting a potential contradiction, and I want to wrestle with this for a second.
Sure, let's hear it.
We started this deep dive by talking about the intimacy secret. The mandate was, be yourself, use your unfiltered voice, be authentic, tell your personal stories. But now we're saying the golden rule is, get out of your ego, nobody cares about you, make it 100% about the reader's selfish needs.
Yes. I see where you're going.
Aren't those two concepts at war with each other? If I'm supposed to show my personality, but the letter has to be entirely about the reader, how do I do both?
That is a beautiful tension to identify, and it's honestly the exact spot where most writers get completely stuck. But they aren't at war. They are a symbiotic partnership. Think of it this way. Your authentic personality is the vehicle, but the reader's benefit is the destination.
Okay, the vehicle and the destination. Tell me more about that.
You are using your unique, intimate voice to talk exclusively about them. Think about the best conversationalist you know, the most magnetic person at a dinner party. Are they usually the person talking endlessly about their own accomplishments?
No, absolutely not. The most magnetic person is the one who asks incredible questions and makes you feel like you are the most fascinating person in the room.
Exactly. They are using their charismatic, authentic personality, their humor, their warmth, their specific way of speaking, to focus the spotlight entirely on you. That is what your writing must do. The tone, the rhythm, the vocabulary, the intimacy, that is all you. But the subject matter, the problem being solved, the dream being painted, that is all them.
Ah, okay. The voice is mine, but the subject is them. I am the charismatic friend helping them get what they want. I love that framing. It totally resolves the conflict. So for the listener, the rule is this. Before you write a single word, you have to answer the so what question for your audience.
Literally write it down if you have to.
Yes. Look at every single feature of your product or service and translate it into a clear, undeniable benefit that directly serves the reader's selfish desires. Don't tell them you have a 204/7 customer service AI. Tell them they will never have to lose a night of sleep worrying about a server crash ever again.
Now, once you have successfully managed that balancing act, so you are using your intimate, love-based voice, and you are focused entirely on the reader's selfish needs, a very practical, structural question naturally arises.
The eternal question that haunts every writer and marketer. How long is too long?
The word count debate.
The endless debate. How much of this beautifully crafted, intimate writing do they actually need to read before they are convinced to take action?
It is easily the most debated topic in copywriting. Short copy versus long copy. But the sources provide a very clear, albeit somewhat surprising, hierarchy of what actually matters in a persuasive campaign. They argue that the copy itself, the actual words you are agonizing over, is only the third most important element of success.
Which is incredibly humbling for writers to hear. So what are numbers 1 and 2?
Number 1 is the list, or the audience traffic you're driving to the offer. Number 2 is the offer itself, the actual deal you are presenting. The old adage in the industry is, if you have a starving crowd, that's the list, and you're selling hot dogs, that's the offer. The copy almost doesn't matter.
Right.
You could just write hot dogs here on a piece of cardboard, and you will make sales. But where copy becomes absolutely vital, where it makes or breaks a campaign, is in the justification of the price point.
Right. The rule of thumb provided is elegant in its simplicity. The length of your copy is directly mathematically tied to the price and complexity of your offer.
It scales proportionally.
If you are asking someone to sign up for a free weekly email newsletter, you just need a few well-chosen punchy words. It's a low-friction ask. Give me your email, I'll send you cool stuff. Done. But if you're trying to sell a $15,000 piece of equipment, like the QuickGen example discussed in these concepts, a few punchy words will result in 0 sales. You need extensive explanation, proof, and persuasion.
And to understand why, we have to look at how the brain actually processes a purchase. A sales letter, especially for a high-ticket item, isn't just about emotional selling. Earlier, we established that love and pleasure are the emotional motivators that drive the initial desire. But a high-priced item requires a secondary process, logical justification.
The battle of the two brains.
Exactly. The reader's emotional brain sees the $15,000 quick gem and says, oh, I want that. I want to look amazing. I want to feel powerful. I love the idea of this. But the moment they look at the price tag, their logical, rational brain immediately slams on the brakes.
It's like a bucket of cold water.
Right. And it says, hold on. How on earth can we justify draining $15,000 from the savings account for a workout machine? What will my spouse say? Is this a scam? Will it break in a year?
And if the copy is short, the emotional brain has no weapons to fight back against the logical brain. The logical brain wins, and they close the tab. The long copy is there specifically to give the emotional brain the ammunition it needs to defend the decision they've already secretly made.
Beautifully put. You are arming them with the rational arguments they need to justify the purchase to themselves, and often to their partner or their boss. You need to explain the patented technology, the durability, the return on investment over a 10-year period, the warranty. That takes words. It takes length.
There is a perfect real-world illustration of this dynamic with the story of the Stampede Secret ebook.
Oh, this is a fascinating case study in market dynamics.
It really highlights the exact tension between the offer, the emotion, and the logical justification. So the author was preparing to release a new instructional ebook called The Stampede Secret, and he had done such a masterful job of teasing this book to his email list over weeks, building up the mystery, the hype, really tapping into their desire and pleasure triggers, that people were literally emailing him begging to buy it before the sales page was even finished.
The list was starving and the offer was highly desired.
Exactly. So seeing this frenzy, he decides to just throw up a bare bones web page. No long sales letter, no deep justification. Just a headline, a picture of the book, a price tag of $97, and a buy now button. And remarkably, he actually made a sale almost instantly.
Which completely validates the point that the list and the offer are more powerful than the copy. If the desire is high enough, people will hurdle over terrible marketing to give you their money. But there is a massive caveat to this story.
A huge caveat. He notes that while he got a trickle of sales from the absolute most rabid fans, the vast majority of people clicked the link, hit the checkout page, saw the $97 price tag for a digital file, and immediately aborted the mission.
The emotional hype got them to walk right up to the door.
But they wouldn't open it.
Right. Because the lack of logical justification, the missing long copy explaining why this information was worth nearly $100, prevented them from walking through it. They had the emotional desire, but their logical brain said, wait, $97 for a PDF? Why? And because the page didn't answer that question, they left. Once he added the full long-form sales letter that justified the value, the sales exploded.
So the lesson for anyone writing to Persuade: do not fear long copy. We have this myth that people have short attention spans and nobody reads anymore. It's not true. People have short attention spans for boring things. People will read as much as you write, provided it is intimate, interesting, and constantly answers their "what's in it for me" questions. If you are asking for a lot of money or a lot of commitment, you are obligated to write enough words to justify that ask.
And as you are writing those thousands of words, as you are building that intricate, logical justification, you face a new challenge. In a long piece of text, how do you ensure the core message doesn't get lost in the weeds? There is a specific mechanical technique you must use to ensure the main idea actually sticks in their brain.
Yes. You've got the right tone, the right emotional trigger, the extreme focus on the reader's ego, and you've mapped out the right length. Now, how do you make it truly hypnotic? How do you drive the message all the way home? The answer is repetition.
And this is something many writers naturally recoil from. They are terrified of repetition. We are taught in school to use synonyms to vary our sentence structure, to never repeat a point because it's considered redundant or annoying.
Right. You get points taken off for repeating yourself in an essay.
Exactly. But in the realm of persuasion and hypnotic communication, repetition is not an annoyance. It is a fundamental tool. Repeating key words, core benefits, and specific phrases installs suggestions directly into the reader's unconscious mind.
There is a story that illustrates this so beautifully. It has nothing to do with business, but it explains the human brain perfectly. Vitale talks about a time he was in a BMW Z3, driving through the city at night with his girlfriend. It's this perfect, cinematic, romantic setting. The top is down, the city lights are flashing by, and she turns to him in the passenger seat and simply asks, "Do you know I love you?"
And his initial reaction is incredibly typical of how we all process information when we are distracted.
Right. He is focused on driving, on the lights, on the sensory experience of the wind, so he just gives a quick nod. He says, yeah. He brushes it off. He physically hears the phonetic sounds coming out of her mouth, but he doesn't feel the weight of the words. His conscious mind deflects it.
It bounces right off him.
Exactly. So she doesn't get mad. She understands human nature. She just waits a beat, and she asks a second time, do you know I love you?
Now the pattern is interrupted.
Yes.
Mm.
He laughs a little nervously this time. The repetition is breaking his normal conversational script. He realizes this isn't just passing chatter. And then she asks a third time, do you know I love you?
And that third strike is the charm. The repetition forces his brain to stop processing the words on a superficial, automated level and truly absorb their semantic meaning. He goes completely silent. The driving fades into the background. He truly hears her, and he feels this sudden, overwhelming swell of emotion. The repetition acted as a drill, bypassing his conscious distraction and speaking directly to his emotional core.
It's so incredibly powerful, and once you understand that this is how the human brain processes importance, you see why master marketers have used this forever.
Oh, absolutely.
The legendary showman P.T. Barnum, one of the greatest promoters in history, once ran a newspaper ad for his museum. And instead of writing a paragraph describing the exhibit, he ran an ad that literally just repeated the phrase, 2 living whales 5 times in a row, stacked right on top of each other in the column.
2 living whales. 2 living whales. Two living whales. 2 living whales.
Exactly. It looks crazy at first glance, but it is impossible to ignore. You scan the crowded newspaper page, and your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that notices patterns and anomalies, is forced to stop and register the message.
The brilliant advertising expert Kenneth Good is referenced on this topic, and he noted that the greatest trick in advertising, the true art of persuasion, is persistently pounding away at the exact same suggestion while maintaining the appearance of a fresh idea.
So you aren't just copying and pasting the same sentence over and over.
No, you weave the core benefit into different contexts. Because the conscious mind's default state is distraction. Readers are thinking about their grocery list, their inbox, their kids. Repetition is the only way to break through that static.
It makes me think of carpentry. It's like driving a nail into a thick piece of oak. The first strike of the hammer just sets the nail in place. It barely breaks the surface. If you stop there, a strong wind will knock the nail right out. The idea hasn't taken hold. You need 3 or 4 more solid, persistent, rhythmic strikes to drive that nail flush into the wood so it becomes permanent. Repetition is the hammer.
That is the perfect operational metaphor. The first mention of a benefit introduces the idea to the logical brain. The second mention reinforces it and connects it to their problem. The third mention installs it as a belief in the emotional brain.
So the immediate practical takeaway here for your next writing session: do not be afraid to restate your main offer or your absolute core benefit multiple times. If it's truly important, say it again.
Say it louder.
Weave it into the headline. Bring it up in a story in the body copy. Highlight it in the bullet points. Echo it in the testimonials, and hammer it one last time in the PS. Strike the nail until it is driven flush.
If we step back and pull all these distinct threads together, the conversational voice, the focus on pleasure, the empathy for the reader's ego, the justification of the ask, and the hypnotic rhythm of repetition, the absolute soul of this deep dive emerges.
The big picture.
Yes. The core truth of the great intimacy secret is that hypnotic writing is not about cold, clinical, sociopathic manipulation.
Not at all.
It is about profound, loving connection. It is about having the terrifying courage to use your authentic, unedited human voice to connect with someone else's deepest desires. It's about setting aside your own ego to deeply empathize with their internal, selfish, what's in it for me questions. And it's about reminding them repeatedly and lovingly that you have exactly the solution they have been searching for.
So, what does this all mean for you as you close this out and get back to work? Think about the piece of writing you're struggling with right now. That email campaign, that pitch deck, that cover letter. What if the very flaw you're trying so desperately to edit out right now, that quirky phrase, that overly passionate tangent, that deeply personal, slightly embarrassing anecdote, what if that is the exact intimacy trigger your audience has been unconsciously waiting to fall in love with?
It completely changes how you look at the blank page.
Yes.
It's no longer a test to be passed. It's a conversation waiting to happen.
It really is. Next time, we'll take this foundational intimacy a step further and look at the actual mind gaps and optical illusions of language that allow you to completely rewire how a reader perceives your price tag, making the expensive feel like an absolute bargain.
Yeah.
Until then, keep driving deep.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.